across the country and to put peace first.
The EU and member states pledged some $592 million in aid for Sudan, while Britain announced an extra $158 million to address the crisis, which includes a growing famine. Missing from the talks was Sudan, although the African Union was a co-host. Sudan's foreign minister has complained to Lamy about his country's exclusion. He also criticized the presence of the United Arab Emirates and Kenya after Sudan accused them of having dealings with the RSF.
4 smugglers caught trying to transport thousands of live ants out of Kenya for sale on exotic pet markets in Europe and Asia will be sentenced for trafficking wildlife in a case being hailed as a milestone by the Kenya Wildlife Service.
4 ant smugglers will be sentenced after pleading guilty to charges of illegal possession and trafficking of live wildlife. The group called themselves the Ant Gang, according to prosecutor Alan Mulama. 2 Belgians, a Vietnamese and a Kenyan, appeared at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport Court on Tuesday. They were caught trying to transport thousands of live ants out of Kenya for sale on exotic pet markets in Europe and Asia. Authorities had intercepted live queen ants. The Kenya Wildlife Service, or KWS, said the sought-after Mesocephalotes species, also known as the giant African harvester ant, was among them. The street value of the insects is $7,800, according to a court document seen by Reuters.
As Ras Hankourab Beach on southern Egypt's Red Sea coast is closed off for development, conservationists warn a fragile ecosystem supporting turtles, the coral reef, seagrasses, and myriad species of fish is under threat. Lucy Fielder reports.
Images obtained by Reuters showed the start of construction work at the beach. Here is Asma Ali, Executive Director of conservation group Ecoris.
This area is important because it is globally ranked as one of the most important spots of biodiversity, including nearly extinct species, including marine ones. It has one of the most precious coral reefs, located at the reserve's beach.
And that's our wrap in terms of our Africa Roundup for today on Rise and Shine.
Got something to say? Are you passionate about issues that matter?
Do you have a voice that deserves to be heard?
Well, we've got the perfect platform for you. Call in or drop us a WhatsApp on +27 63 406 9126.
And we will call you back.
So you could have your say and be part of the conversation.
30 years of age, I just turned 30 on the 15th of November. So yeah, that's who I am, you know.
It's not just talk, it's your chance to air your views.
Share your opinion.
Engage with a community that values your perspective.
Follow us on our social media.
Visit our website at www.channelafrica.co.za and get ready to share your views on Channel Africa,
the African perspective.
Big news from Channel Africa. Now you can listen and watch your favorite shows
on Channel Africa.
Channel Africa is streaming live on the internet on all our social media pages at Channel Africa 1
from 6 a.m. till 9 p.m. Central African Time. Download the SABC Plus app or visit our website www.channelafrica.co.za
and stream us live on all our social media pages
at Channel Africa 1. Channel Africa now streaming
for your eyes and ears only.
Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Are you fluent in French,
Chinyanja,
Portuguese,
and Kiswahili?
Are you passionate about radio? And are you looking to work in South Africa? Do you have papers that qualify you to work in South Africa?
In that case,
we might have an opportunity for you to work for Channel Africa.
Send us your CV and demo
at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Remember, if you don't hear from us within 14 days, it means you have not made it or you have not been selected.
Channel Africa, the African perspective. Your morning companion
with the stories that matter.
This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
It's 15 minutes past 6 Central African time. South Africa's industrial sector is facing pressure on the back of declining mining production as well as manufacturing production that has also been on the back foot. According to data released by South Africa's stats agency, Statistics South Africa, mining was down by 9.6% annually in February, while manufacturing was down 3.2%. Dimakadzo Lishoro has the details.
South Africa's mining production was down for 4 consecutive months in February, weighed by the platinum group metals, which made the largest contribution to the decline after dropping by a whopping 23.9%, followed by iron ore, gold and coal. This decline comes as uncertainty regarding U.S. reciprocal tariffs persists. Hugo Pina is Chief Economist at the Mining Council of South Africa.
The latest figures for real mining production indicate a tough start to 2025, with 9 out of the 12 mining subcategories showing month-on-month output declines for the month of February. As a result, total seasonally adjusted mining production declined by a steep 4.4% during February. This is on a month-on-month basis, with output of nickel and platinum group metals showing the largest declines.
Even though some of these commodities will be allowed duty-free into the U.S., the constantly changing policy stance has negatively affected sentiment and saw commodity prices collapse by a substantial minus 5.2% month-on-month in April. FNB senior economist Thanda Sithole says the weak performance may be temporary, adding that the issue of tariff has caused additional strain. In 2024, South African exports of minerals and precious metals to the U.S. totaled $3.4 billion, with PGMs accounting for 76.3% of the total.
The sharper than expected decline reflects a mix of temporal factors, including mine refurbishments and heavy rainfall, which affected operations in some mines, but also underscores broader sub-sectoral pressures. On a year-to-date basis, output is down by 5.6%, with global headwinds from weaker Chinese demand to renewed tariff risks under Trump 2.0 presidency, adding to the strain. Encouragingly, ongoing reforms in energy and logistics could ease structural bottlenecks and support a more resilient recovery ahead.
The manufacturing sector has not been immune. It has also been on the back foot, declining by 3.2% annually in February according to recent data. Car manufacturing, which have also been slapped with a 25% across-the-board tariff increase by the U.S., led the declines in manufacturing.
The outlook remains muted. Domestic demand is weak, and while energy constraints have eased, concerns over tariffs and global uncertainty continue to affect sentiment. We expect manufacturing output to grow by no more than 1% this year.
Pinar says even though the March data will only be released next month, the current figures point to a sharp contraction in the first quarter of 2025.
With January and February's data now available, it looks very likely that we will see a sharp quarterly decline in mining production during the first quarter of 2025. This will, of course, then weigh on the real GDP number for the first quarter.
For Channel Africa News, I'm Dimakadzo Lishoro in Johannesburg.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine, weekdays 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
Lesotho's Foreign Affairs Minister Ndoro and Asanda has refuted allegations that Lesotho has gone out of its way to appease U.S. President Donald Trump. A local publication says it has correspondence that shows a list of concessions the Mountain Kingdom has offered to offset hefty tariffs, claims that Minister Ndoro has since dismissed.
As the government of Lesotho, like I said, after hearing the reciprocal tariffs from the United States of America hitting very high to the government of Lesotho, the people of Lesotho, around 50% tariff. We looked into the numbers and we found that Lesotho, yes, submitted the bound tariffs to the WTO of around of an average of 79.4%. But when you look at the trade data, Lesotho and US have been trading, and no US consignment came to Lesotho and was charged at the rate of 99%. So we are saying the rate of 50% is quite too high for us, because it was said that if you are charging us 99%, we'll divide that by 2 and then we'll give you half. And we are saying we did not charge 99%, or we are not charging 99% on any imports that are coming to Lesotho from the United States of America. We are only charging the 7.5, which is the common external tariff from SACU. And we wrote a letter requesting an audience with the executive of the United States of America for us to engage, for us to look at the numbers and find each other on the table of negotiation. We are still waiting for the response to get that audience. We wrote the second letter requesting a telephone call between the President of the United States of America and the Right Honorable the Prime Minister of Lesotho. We wrote the third letter. The third letter was now providing the details of the tariffs from the government of Lesotho to the imports that are coming from the United States of America. And in all those letters, we have just requested an audience to come to the table and engage and see what we can agree on.
21 minutes past 6, and remember, you can find us on our social media platforms. We are on X, we are on Instagram, and we are on TikTok. And the handle there is at Channel Africa 1. You can find us on Facebook as Channel Africa. We're going to get into our West Africa wrap. Every day we have a section of our continent that we focus on, whether it's Central, East, West, or North, South Africa. Now today on Wednesdays we do the West Africa side of things. Of course, going to be looking at Gabon. They've just had their elections there, so lots of updates coming from that front. Also looking at Nigeria and the Minister of Information and National Orientation there, Mohammed Idris, talking Boko Haram and the strides being made around Boko Haram, their insurgency. I think it was yesterday when we were just reflecting on the fact that it's been about 15 years before the abduction of those girls, where that entire movement was founded, called hashtag Bring Back Our Girls. And the insurgents are still in operation. So we'll be talking about that. Also, Togo will be talking about the president there who's been appointed AU mediator. And this is amid controversy in the DRC and the peace process happening there. And then, of course, US President Donald Trump is on our lips almost every day. So we're going to be touching on that in terms of what he's done next. What can he do next? He can do anything literally at this point. We'll tell you more about that as we speak to our political analyst and chairman at Think Tank Pan-African Forum, Dr. David Matsanga, to just enlighten us on those stories. 23 minutes past 6. Good morning on Rise and Shine.
Africa, meet Abedi.
Yeah, that's me.
Abedi is a music lover through and through.
I really love African music.
He's got a taste for all kinds of tunes and spends his days listening to Channel Africa. Guess what? He didn't know.
Okay.
Channel Africa wants to help Abedi and all music lovers everywhere to discover even more incredible music. That is why Channel Africa is calling on all African musicians to submit their music. Musicians, remember to give us all your relevant information. Make your submissions at music@channelafrica.co.za. Submissions are your chance to be heard on radio, but sadly, they do not guarantee that you will be playlisted. All submissions will be carefully reviewed to see if they meet our station's requirement. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Silipendo na I am Henry Shekif.
Baiter, mambo vipi? Mwaka 2025 mpaka hivi sasa ukoje kwa upande wako mzee baba?
Kabisa, kwa sababu tumejiandaa vizuri. Kama mwaka jana tumefunga vizuri na Septemba, mwaka huu tumefungua vizuri na
hatari sana. Mzee umejipanga, utaki kutupumzisha?
Maana mwanzo alikuwa analalamika sana, spend long time without releasing songs, blah blah blah. Now I need to
back to back. Platform, mambo vipi?
Mambo poa kabisa, wanasemaje uko SA?
Yani huko kuna shangwe, yani la kufa mtu asikwambie mtu babu.
Hii ni mara yangu ya kwanza pia kusikika kwa pande hizo za South Africa.
Karibu sana, unajisikiaje?
Na furaha kubwa sana kwa sababu ni mara yangu ya kwanza, na I hope watu watakuwa wananisikiliza watu wengi pia. Ili uweze kuvuka nje, watu waweze kukufahamu, tuseme West hivi na nchi tofauti tofauti, ni lazima pia uanze kufanya vizuri hapa nyumbani, then uvuke East Africa, after East Africa.
Zilipendwa hapa kwenye Channel Africa, taswira ya Afrika.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Let's welcome Dr. David Matsanga now, who is a political analyst and chairman at a think tank called Pan-African Forum, as we cover stories making headlines across the continent. Our focus on this Wednesday is West Africa, the region. Thank you so much for joining us, Doctor. Always great catching up with you. How are you?
Thank you very much, my dear sister. Thank you. Good morning.
Ngwema wins the presidential election. A landslide victory is what you call this.
This is one of the most biggest frauds that Africa should not tolerate. You cannot pick up a gun. You pick up a gun from your barracks, overthrow a government, put the leader in house arrest, terrible conditions, stop him from going for medical treatment. You run the government for 1 year. You put down your uniform, remove your t-shirt of military and your pistol, organize a short election without calling in international agencies that supervise, that can qualify, African Union and other agencies, Commonwealth, to qualify this type of transition. We have what we call a transition in African studies. This guy did not call a transition government and did not create any team of transition. He simply said, I'll hold elections, and he started telling people to get to try to start campaigning, remove the uniform, pick the proxy, violated Article 2, violated Article 5, violated Article 23, violated Article 25 of African charter.
Some strong sentiments from you there, Dr. on Gabon, but because we don't have a lot of time, please can I just intercept and we move to Nigeria there, but I appreciate your views. In Nigeria, the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, says Boko Haram has been significantly degraded and is standing on its last leg. Before we run out of time, I want us to touch on this because I feel like we've ignored stories around Boko Haram now, possibly due to insensitivity from all that we've heard happening from there. What is the latest there in Nigeria on Boko Haram?
Boko Haram has been in Nigeria for a long time. And Nigeria, it is high time that Nigeria accepted that it has failed to conquer Boko Haram. It has failed to remove the cells of Boko Haram that have spread across the Sahel region. Therefore, Nigeria should declare entirely a state of emergency, calling UN, calling all forces, like we did with Al-Shabaab in East Africa, in Somalia, and we go in to help Nigerian government. Nigerian government has got more troops than some other countries in Africa. But the troops in Nigeria instead kill people, kill civilians, instead of going to kill Boko Haram. That is how the situation is in Nigeria.
U.S. President Donald Trump has ended the protected status for Cameroonians as well as for Afghans who are based in the U.S. What do you make of this move? It's been deemed as others as dangerous.
It is very dangerous because this is one of the countries in the whole of Africa that I have been struggling for the last 9 years. From 1961, the Southern Cameroon English-speaking country has been isolated, has been tortured, has been killed, has been beaten by people from the French-speaking countries. So it is sad, completely sad, for President Trump to thank some of these people who are already refugees who have been removed from Cameroon by Paul Biya's regime. Therefore, it is a sad issue, condemnable. It must be condemned. You should give them chance. Or immediately, Mr. Trump should put embargo, sanctions on Paul Biya. Force Paul Biya to start going on the negotiating table, so that someone is 92, he's still stuck there. He wants to run another election. That's why people are running out of Cameroon.
And there is still instability in Cameroon, as well as threats to one's safety. So one wonders why would have, or what would have informed Donald Trump to make these decisions. But we are completely out of time. I wish we had more time, Dr. David Matsanga, but we'll try again next week to cover more in terms of West African stories. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you very much. Anytime I am available, and as you can see, I'm able to talk until the cows come home.
Absolutely. That's Dr. David Matsanga, political analyst and chairman of the Pan-African Forum. Other stories making headlines in the West Africa region: Mauritanian authorities having broken up several migrant smuggling networks in just 3 days, this stopping multiple attempts to transport people illegally to European shores, as well as Togo's president has been appointed the AU mediator amid controversy in the DR Congo peace process, or the Democratic Republic of Congo's peace process. I'm sure we'll get into those stories here on Rise and Shine before 9 o'clock. Otherwise, stay tuned to Channel Africa for more details as other programming continues. 32 minutes past 6 Central African time. Let's get news headlines with Jolane Tulo Mwepe.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Making headlines, Sudan's paramilitaries have declared the formation of a rival government to the country's armed forces. Yesterday marked 2 years since the start of the war that has become the world's largest humanitarian crisis. The Speaker of South Africa's Parliament, Togo Didiza, has been elected chairperson of the Africa Group of the Inter-Parliamentary Union Assembly in Uzbekistan. As chairperson of the Africa Group, her responsibilities will include convening member parliaments. And finally, US President Donald Trump has threatened to strip his country's oldest university of its tax exemption status. The White House has already frozen grants to Harvard University as government attempts to impose conditions on campuses. I will have details on these and other stories at 7 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
All right, thanks, Jolane. And let's get our sports update now. Fikile Lingwati has your details.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Let's begin with football news. Good morning. Well, football's governing body, FIFA President Gianni Infantino, has hinted at Atlanta's potential as a host for the 2031 Women's World Cup as he brought the Club World Cup trophy to the city's Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Infantino praised the city's sporting credentials ahead of this summer's expanded Club World Cup tournament. The Mercedes-Benz Stadium will host 6 matches during the tournament, including 3 knockout games, when the competition runs from the 15th of June to the 13th of July. Infantino suggested strong performances as hosts could strengthen Atlanta's bid for future tournaments. Simba Sports Club head coach Fadlu Davids made history by becoming the first coach to take Tanzanian Giants to the CAF Interclub semi-final. One of Africa's proudest football coaching export helped Simba beat Egyptian side Al Masry FC 5-3 on penalties after fighting back to a 2-all aggregate draw in Dar es Salaam last week. The 22-time Tanzanian champions had only been to the quarterfinals of the CAF Confederations Cup and CAF Champions League before, but after a 32-year wait, David says this is for the Nguvu Moja fans.
This one is for the fans. They came out in numbers in bad weather. They supported us when we didn't get good results. They were there behind us. They came out in numbers today. And without them pushing us for the entire 90 minutes, I don't think it would have been possible. So huge. This one is for the fans of Simba.
With Simba set to face South African side Stellenbosch FC in the two-legged last four stage, the former Orlando Pirates assistant coach is happy there will be at least one South African coach in the final.
Yeah, I think a good thing for South African football that an African coach will be in the final, whether it's myself or Coach Steve Barker. So I think for South African coach, huge plus. Both it's two European coaches in the Champions League, and let's hope we can have a Sundowns Pirates final in the Champions League. And
finally, boxing news: Daniel Dubois and Alexander Usyk are in talks to fight at Wembley Stadium on the 12th of July. The rival heavyweight champions hold all four major world titles between them, with Dubois the IBF champion and Usyk the WBA Super, WBO and WBC belt holder. Usyk is undefeated in 23 fights and has a win over Dubois, stopping him in August 2023. Their rematch will be for the undisputed heavyweight title, as well as offer 27-year-old Dubois the chance of revenge. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fire Lengwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Você é fluente em português? É apaixonado por rádio e quer trabalhar na África do Sul? Você tem documentos que o qualificam para trabalhar na África do Sul? Nesse caso, podemos ter uma oportunidade para você trabalhar no Canal África. Envie seu currículo e demonstração para Canal África @ newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Lembre-se, se você não receber alguma resposta nossa em 14 dias, isso significa que você não foi selecionado. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Tabiso Lehuko standing by with our economics update now. Good morning, Mr. Lehuko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and a very good morning. Nigeria's headline consumer inflation edged up to 24.23% year-on-year in March from 23.18% in February. A report by the National Bureau of Statistics showed price rises for food and non-alcoholic beverages were the biggest contributor to annual inflation. Inflation in Nigeria soared to repeated 28-year peaks last year, spurred by President Bola Tinubu's moves to curb costly subsidies and devalue the Naira currency after he came to power in 2023. West Africa-focused oil and gas explorer Tullow Oil says it will sell its assets in Kenya to Gulf Energy Limited for at least $120 million as it works to reduce its debt. In a statement, Tullow says it will get a $340 million payments, be entitled to royalty payments, and have the right to 30% participation in potential future development phases at no cost. Buntle Headbush has the details.
The company's Kenyan oil fields have not been brought into full production, as any export route would require building hundreds of miles of a heated pipeline to the coast. It recorded a $145 million write-off on these operations last year. Last month, Tullow agreed to sell its working interest in Gabon for $300 million in cash. It had a net debt of around $1.5 billion at the end of last year.
Canadian gold mining company B2Gold has announced plans to cut 300 jobs in Namibia this year as it goes ahead with the phased downscaling of operations at its Otjikoto mine after depletion of open-pit reserves. The Otjikoto mine produced a record 198,000 142 ounces of gold last year. Chanduko Legege has the details.
Open pit mining at the mine is expected to cease this year following the depletion of gold ore, but the company will continue processing stockpiles at least until 2032. The mine's current underground operations are expected to run until 2027, with an extension possible if going exploration successfully uncovers additional mineral deposits. B2Gold's phased reduction of operations in Namibia began in the first quarter of 2024, with 130 employees laid off during the year.
Barclays has downgraded U.S. autos and mobility sector to negative from neutral, warnings that President Donald Trump's tariffs could pressure automakers' earnings and curb investments. The comments echo those cited by Goldman Sachs last week when the U.S. brokerage cut its estimate of automobile sales in the country for this year by nearly 1 million units. Trump's tariff policy has been constantly evolving, and while he temporarily paused levies on most imports and exempted certain Chinese products, duties on auto, steel and aluminium remain unchanged. Indonesia's Energy Minister Bahlil Lahadalia says Indonesia will propose increasing its imports of crude oil and liquefied petroleum gas from the United States by around $10 billion. This is part of its tariff negotiations. Indonesia plans to buy goods worth $18 billion to $19 billion from the U.S. as it seeks to cover its trade surplus with the country and avoid a threatened 32% tariff on its exports. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 603. Botswana 13 pula 76. Kenya 128 shilling 853, and Zambia 28 kwacha 28. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar will cost you 5 real 86. Russia 82 rubles 373. India 85 rupees 76. China 71 30. And in South Africa, $1 is trading at 18 rand 93. $1 is trading at 75 pence to the British pound and 88 to the euro. A look at commodities markets now. Gold is trading at $3,267 and platinum at $956 per ounce, while Brent crude oil is at $64.53 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabisolo Hoku.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
All right, let's get our G20 fact for this Wednesday, the 16th of April. Did you know that prior to the African Union joining the Group of 20, a collection of the world's largest economies, commonly known as the G20, as a permanent member in the 2023, the G20 represented 85% of global GDP, 75% of international trade, and 2/3 of the world's population. The inclusion of the AU is particularly significant as it represents 55 member states with a combined GDP of $3 trillion and a population of 1.4 billion people. And that's our G20 fact this morning.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability. With the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Let's continue with our news coverage coming to the country now where we are broadcasting live from, which is South Africa. We're in Johannesburg. If you've just tuned in, good morning. So economic analysts have welcomed the appointment of South Africa's former Deputy Finance Minister and MTN Chairman Mcebisi Jonas as a special envoy to the United States. In a statement, President Cyril Ramaphosa said Jonas is entrusted with the responsibility to advance South Africa's diplomatic, trade and bilateral priorities. Jonas's appointment comes while government considers a replacement of a South African ambassador to the U.S. Jonas gained broad support after testifying at the state capture inquiry and revealing that he rejected an underhanded offer for the position of finance minister by members of the Gupta family back in 2016. Naledi Ngobo filed this report.
The presidency has asserted that Jonas will lead negotiations, foster strategic partnerships, and engage with the U.S. government officials and private sector leaders to promote the nation's interests. The Alliance of Business Leaders, Business for South Africa, has hailed Jonas's appointment as a crucial step towards improving relations between South Africa and America. B4SA CEO Martin Kingston elaborates.
Well, there's no doubt that we need a special envoy, and the President has demonstrated quite clearly his commitment to a reset of the relationship with the United States, and I would argue that that is absolutely crucial at this moment in time when jobs is our primary focus as a country, and the partnership between business and government underscores that critical issue. And the United States is a key trading and investment partner, let alone the broader influence that it has around the world.
Makwe Masilela of Makwe Fund Managers says, along with other supporting factors, including a weaker dollar and a regain in confidence about the government of national unity, the appointment of Jonas as a special envoy to the U.S. also helps to strengthen the rand by 1.1% from last week's weaker levels.
And if you look into his political background, if you look into his government policies, formulations, stuff like that, he's got the necessary background. If you look into business, the guy's been into business years, as much as the number of years he spent into business are not the same as the one that he was, so he did spend as a politician or as a government official. And I think probably this will work well. And the reason I'm saying that even business, South Africa, they're happy with the kind of the appointment, and hopefully they will be able to influence the guys in the US that please, you need to give this guy, an ear, because all he will be doing is just to make sure that the relations gets to be smooth.
Some civil society organizations have raised concerns about Jonas's ability to succeed in the appointment given his previous comments. Jonas referred to U.S. President Donald Trump as a racist and a homophobe during the annual Ahmed Kathrada lecture in 2020. Annalili Ngobo in Johannesburg.
Update and Channel Africa's
The United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, reports that over 3 million children are involved in prostitution globally, while the International Labour Organization estimates that 1 million people are trafficked annually for sexual exploitation. Many victims are worried with forced promises of a better future.
We have serious problems now. When we had promised others is access of these criminal transnational syndicates coming in and moving at ease. Number 1. Number 2, we also have a problem where some of our law enforcement officers, those who are rogue, who let them interact with the syndicates because they give them something in return of them turning a blind eye. And number 3, we have a problem of corruption that leads to us being a playground of this transnational organized crime. Africa Update with Lulu Kapoor, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
Você é fluente em português? É apaixonado por rádio e quer trabalhar na factual? Você tem documentos que qualificam para trabalhar na factual? Nesse caso, podemos ter uma oportunidade para você trabalhar no canal África. Envie seu currículo ou votação para canal África. canalafrica.co.za. Lembre-se, se você não receber alguma resposta nossa em 14 dias, isso significa que você não foi selecionado. Canal África. A perspectiva africana.
The rhythm of Africa, the pulse of the continent. This is Channel Africa, the African perspective.
All right, still to come on the show, we talk about Haiti and the unrest going on there. It seems that gang violence is intensifying, as we've heard in recent news reports that gangs have practically taken over Port-au-Prince, and they seem to be even intimidating the police themselves. We're not sure if that would be because of lack of resources for the police forces there, but we want to discuss that in terms of happening in Haiti with Haitian American national security law and foreign relations analyst. A topic that we have touched on earlier here on Rise and Shine. Last week we spoke about Kenya deploying more police officers there as part of a UN-backed mission. We also want to find out in terms of that. We still are with you until 9 this morning, so lots to cover. In the next hour, you can expect us to talk about other stories making headlines, Mozambique and the strike that's happening there by health personnel. Also, we'll talk about Malawi and climate change progress being made, as well as South Africa and Taiwan Chinese relations, and in terms of a diplomatic office being moved in location and what that means and the implications of that when it comes to our relationship there with Taiwan and China. So lots more to look forward to on the show here on Rise and Shine. It's 10 minutes before the top of the hour, Central African time, before we get to 7 o'clock. And let's talk about Haiti now. So the humanitarian situation in Haiti continues to deteriorate. Aid organization Save the Children says in the first 3 months of this year, more than 78,500 people were displaced by gang violence. The number is more than double that of the same period a year ago. This week, the head of the UN Migration Agency in the country urged the international community to respond to an escalating humanitarian crisis in the Caribbean country. To get the latest, we joined on the line by Joanna LeBlanc, who is Haitian American National Security Law and Foreign Relations Analyst. Good morning, Joanna, and thank you for making time for us on Rise and Shine. Good morning, Joanna. Are you there?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you? And thank you for making time for us this morning.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
So the humanitarian situation in Haiti, it continues to worsen as gang violence is intensifying. Is the UN's call for more international support being heeded at this stage?
I'm so sorry. I'm having a hard time hearing you. I'm so sorry.
The humanitarian situation in Haiti, it continues to worsen as gang violence is intensifying there. Is the UN's call for more international support being heeded, according to how you see it?
Well, as you indicated, the situation on the ground has become increasingly more and more dire as time goes on. I mean, you're talking about a country where roughly 80% of the capital, Port-au-Prince, is covered by gangs. A place where more than 1 million people have been displaced. A place where countless young children and especially girls and women have been raped by some of these gang members. So certainly there's a need for support to help address this insecurity crisis. But however, I think it's important that we put this into context, that what we're seeing on the ground is not by accident, right? One thing we know is that the Republic of Haiti does not manufacture weapons, right? There's been an arms embargo on Haiti for more than 2 decades, right? So there's evidence that many of these guns are coming from other parts of the world, in particular places like the United States, as well as countries in the region, such as the Dominican Republic. So even if you were to have a UN intervention in the country right now, without Haiti's international partners putting measures in place to restrict the flow of weapons into the country, you still would not be able to remedy the crisis.
So if there is an external force fueling gang violence in the country, if it does turn out to be what the allegations are, that it could be the U.S., what does the U.S. stand to gain from this?
Well, when I talk about guns coming from the U.S., we're not talking about U.S. government sending guns to the country. We're talking about when folks purchase cars and cargoes and they're shipping them to the Republic of Haiti, they stuff them with guns, right? Whether it be from places like Florida, Texas, and Georgia, or whether it be from places like the Dominican Republic, right? So that's what we're saying about some of these guns. But the reality is that we have to look at it. The U.S. itself has a gun problem that it has yet to address. So it's very complicated for the U.S. to completely to completely eradicate the number of guns going to Haiti. But I do think that there are some measures that could be taken in order to reduce the number of guns that end up in the hands of some of these gang members. And also, too, I think it's important for us to be honest here. The insecurity crisis in Haiti is not one that is driven by what some would say an ideology, right? Many of these folks are in the gang, especially the young ones, for simply survival. More than 60% of the country is unemployed. So it makes it much, much easier to recruit some of these young folks and to engage in this level of atrocity and instability.
So Haiti has recently adopted a war budget, and they've allocated about $275,000 US, and they're saying this is to alleviate the gang crisis in the country. 40% of this budget has been driven towards the police and military to fight armed groups there. What do you think would be the best way to spread this 40%, the bulk of it going to the police and the military, to fight these armed groups or gangs?
Yeah, I do believe that in order to address this crisis, you do have to build capacity within the country. Currently, you have the Haitian National Police, which is severely underfunded. And also, some of these gangs have even more sophisticated weapons than members of the Haitian National Police. So they do need the additional support. And then you have the Haitian Army, which was disbanded back in 1986, but has been reformed for the past decade or so, but has really dealt with a crisis of not enough assistance from Haiti's international partners and even internally. So I think that by allocating funding for Haiti's two security forces is one that is vital to addressing the crisis in Haiti. And also, too, you have to think about it, even with the Kenyan admission in the country, those folks are actually getting paid more than the average member, well, then not just the average, but they're getting paid more than members of the Haitian National Police. So from a psychological standpoint, it's one that does not sit well with those folks. So I think allocating additional funding and making sure that they are paid properly is important. But I'm not sure how far 270,000 is going to go in terms of addressing in terms of building capacity with these two security forces. So I think certainly more funding is needed to make sure that they have access to equipment, they have access to intelligence that will allow them to do the job, and also to have access to better pay so that they can feed their families and that they can be able to access some of their basic necessities as they're fighting to help restore peace and security on the island.
Interesting to note is that part of this war budget hasn't mentioned anything about that UN-backed mission in Haiti led by Kenyan police, which has been said to be lacking in resources, and you touch on that. In one of the latest attacks in a police station and a prison, police themselves fled that attack by the gang. So it would seem that more police reinforcement is necessary. Why do you think this budget does not mention fueling more money into that Kenya UN-backed mission with the police?
Well, I think the country is certainly does not have a great deal of resources. I think they're doing their best to allocate resources to where they see need. As you know, the Kenyan mission is being financed by members by various states across the world that have committed to helping to address this insecurity crisis, right? And with the bulk of it being financed by the United States. So I think from the Haitian government's perspective, there's money coming in from the U.S. So let's use our little resources to better equip and to better strengthen the Haitian National Police and the Haitian Army, because the reality is that Kenya will leave, right? So when Kenya leaves, what happens to the Haiti security forces? They need to build capacity in the meantime.
Yeah, let's leave it there for now. Thank you, Johanna. Always great getting insight on you on this Haiti gang situation.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Joanna LeBlanc. You too. Joanna LeBlanc is Haitian-American National Security Law and Foreign Relations Analyst. She's also a former senior foreign policy advisor to Haiti's ambassador to the United States. Well, 7 o'clock Central African time it is as we enter the second hour of Africa Rise and Shine. Good morning to you. My name is Asanda Beda. We're coming to you live from our Johannesburg studios in South Africa. You're listening on DSTV channel 802, or you're listening on OpenView 6 to 8, or you could be on the www.channelafrica.co.za website, as well as SABC Plus app. Whichever way you're connecting with us, we appreciate you joining us, and we are with you until 9 this morning. We'll get into our stories for this next hour, but let's get our news update first with Jalane Tulo Mwepe, and then Fikile Lingwati has our sports headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Sudan's paramilitaries have declared the formation of a rival government to the country's armed forces. Yesterday marked 2 years since the start of the war that has become the world's largest humanitarian crisis. The leader of the Rapid Support Forces, RSF, Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo, said the group was, quote, building the only realistic future for Sudan. Fighting raged on, with the army saying it had bombed RSF positions outside the city of Al-Fasher, forcing hundreds of thousands to flee the Zamzam refugee camp. Meanwhile, the US has strongly condemned violence inflicted on civilians and aid workers in placement camps in Western Sudan. Hundreds of thousands of people have fled from the Zamzam camp, which the paramilitary RSF recently captured. A conference in London has called for an immediate ceasefire in Sudan. The UN's George Moreira da Silva is in Port Sudan.
We need peace, but we also need humanitarian aid to be provided at scale and at speed. It's important to find a good negotiation path, to have a genuine dialogue among parties to stop this war. This is probably the largest humanitarian crisis in the world.
The Speaker of South Africa's Parliament, Togo Didiza, has been elected chairperson of the Africa Group of the Inter-Parliamentary Union, or IPU, Assembly in Uzbekistan. As chairperson of the Africa Group, her responsibilities will include convening member parliaments. South Africa's chairship of the African Caucus will ensure that parliaments contribute to making Africa the best performing continent in human rights, democracy and conflict resolution. Didiza explains.
There are various tracks of negotiations. The question that therefore arises is how to, as Parliament in the region, through the SADC Parliamentary Forum, take stock of decisions that have been made through the agreements at the summit level to see to it that indeed the various cabinets in the continent will adhere to those decisions that have been taken.
Testifying in the reopened inquest into the death of leader of South Africa's African National Congress Party, Nkosi Albert Luthuli, in 1967, daughter-in-law Wilhelmina Luthuli has described his injuries to the Pietermaritzburg High Court in the KwaZulu-Natal province. She has testified that the family never believed that he was struck by a train, as the original inquest found. She has told the court some important evidence was never laid in that inquest, saying she believes it was a cover-up for the government's involvement in Nkosi Lutuli's death. Velimina Lutuli said her father-in-law left home early in the morning, as was his habit. She says when she saw Lutuli in hospital, he looked like his normal self but had a deep gash on the top of his head.
The wound was not bandaged. It was open. He was trying to speak. It was painful to watch him struggling to speak. He was really trying hard to say something but could not. His one arm was limp. There was not much blood. He could recognize our faces but just could not communicate. He was mumbling.
And finally, US President Donald Trump has threatened to strip his country's oldest university of its tax exemption status. The White House has already frozen grants to Harvard University as government attempts to impose conditions on campuses. It has accused some universities, including Harvard, of left-wing activism and anti-Semitism during frequent pro-Palestinian demonstrations. Nicholas Bowie, a Harvard law professor, is one of several people seeking to block Trump's attempts to defund the institution.
One of the central demands in his letter is he wants to appoint a monitor on each program in the university to evaluate its viewpoint. And if he thinks that the viewpoint is insufficiently supportive of what he wants to demand that the university hire people that he chooses.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo Mwebe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our sports headlines, African referees, 12 of them, are expected to officiate at the upcoming 2025 FIFA Club World Cup in the United States. And SASCOC is undergoing a slow consultative process to bid for the 2036 or 2040 Olympic and Paralympic Games. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Thanks, Fix and Jwalane. So to come up in this hour of Africa Rise and Shine, we talk of climate negotiators and government officials from 46 least developed countries meeting in Blantyre, Malawi, to reflect on the outcomes of COP29. And then we also speak about South Africa having directed Taiwan to relocate its liaison office in Johannesburg, citing its commitment to the One China policies. All that and more coming up, of course. Let's start now with Mozambique. So health professionals in Mozambique are expected to down tools this week and on a national strike over working conditions. Here's more from Milton Maluleke.
At stake are the demands of the Association of United and Solidarity Health Professionals of Mozambique, which for 3 years has been asking the government to provide medicines to hospitals, purchase hospital beds, resolve the lack of food, equip ambulance with emergency materials and non-dispensable personal protective equipment, pay overtime, and improve the framework within the scope of the single salary table. Anselmo Chaves, President of the Association of United and Solidarity Health Professionals of Mozambique, highlights. Health professionals are beginning a 30-day strike, which will be extended in phases. If the government continues with the standoff, we will intensify our strike. Healthcare professionals will suspend hospital care outside normal business hours. This is the first phase of the strike that begins this Thursday. Mushav adds the claims. The first phase will be the change of working hours due to the lack of observance of payments for overtime, shift allowances, emergencies. The first phase of our strike will observe our activities only in a fixed schedule from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. The lack of observance of the payment of overtime and shift allowances, as well as the rest period recommended by law, forces health professionals to suspend their shift work hours so that the government has peace of mind in calculation and seeking budgets for the payment of what is owed to health professionals. The information released at press conference led by the president of the Association of United and Solidarity Health Professionals of Mozambique once again accused the government of doing nothing to meet the demands of the medical professionals. We are in Mozambique and the recent protests were not agreed upon by everyone. The government pays people not to participate in the strikes. So we cannot say that the strike is agreed upon by everyone, because not all the press is represented here, even though they have no problems accessing this place. The government has been working normally since the protests and now it no longer wants to work with the people. So we must show that Mozambique cannot stop and the people cannot stop demanding. We cannot lie to the world that we do not have problems here at home, given that the country is not in good shape and health professionals cannot be enslaved. And the threats are already being felt by health professionals. This is according to Napoleon Viola, president of the Mozambican Medical Association. Colleagues who have already agreed not to work in order to participate in the strike are receiving threats. In particular, those colleagues with weak employment ties, those who are contracted and those who have professional appointments are all receiving pressure and intimidation that they will not be appointed permanently, will not progress in their careers, or that their contracts will not be renewed. All of this has been happening. The Association of United and Solidarity Health Professionals of Mozambique's leadership also recommends that health professionals who notice a lack of work material in their sectors do not try any alternative means but wait for the government to provide them. Reporting from Maputo to Channel Africa News, I'm Milton Malulek.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
Climate negotiators and government officials from 46 least developed countries, or LDCs, are meeting in Blantyre, Malawi, to reflect on the outcome of COP29 held in Baku, Azerbaijan. This meeting is for Africa and other LDCs to integrate loss and damage priorities into nationally determined contributions and national adaptation plans. This in turn to strengthen their negotiating positions at COP30 and beyond. LDC's Group Chairperson Evans Njewa says strategies will be laid out to ensure that needs of affected nations are addressed at COP30 in Brazil this year. George Mango reports from Blantyre.
By the end of the meeting, climate negotiators and government officials will have deliberated on how to access $300 billion in annual climate finance and explore modalities for finalizing the roadmap to mobilize $1.3 trillion in climate funding. The meeting also comes at a time when climate and weather experts say African countries are losing between 5 to 15% of their gross domestic product (GDP) to climate change and extreme weather, costing developing economies more than $525 billion. This is on the pretext that climate change caused increasingly severe and irreversible damage to Africa's ecosystems, infrastructure and livelihoods, thereby affecting communities despite their minimal contribution to global greenhouse gas emissions. Malawi's Minister of Natural Resources and Climate Change, Owen Chomaniga, who opened the meeting, noted that as effects of climate change worsen, affected countries should push for climate action to build resilience for sustainable development. Chomaniga thinks African countries have failed to access climate financing due to failure to meet loan conditions and present clear developed strategies of getting funds to help victims of climate change.
As countries who are least developed, we need to come up with a proper strategy on how best we can deal with issues of climate because we need to adapt and also mitigate some of the issues as we are taking our people in the development path. So it's just to encourage them to take this very seriously, because we need a strategy, and we need a strategy that has got proper operations and proper tactics aligned to the development of these countries, so that at least as countries which are least developed, we should be able to be in the path where we can graduate and become developed.
Odesanka, manager in the Adaptation Division of the United Nations Climate Change Secretariat, says while it is critical that efforts be maintained to secure just and equitable climate finance, it is also important that in the current global context, LDCs make renewed efforts to make diversified, homegrown solutions to scale up climate finance.
So there's a need to supplement the grants and the concessional loans with a lot of other financial engineering solutions, so what's called innovative finance. So finding new ways of raising capital that will actually raise the huge amounts of money needed to address climate change.
Evans Njewa, who is the LDC's group chairperson, says unlocking timely and effective support from the newly operational fund for responding to loss and damage remains their wish.
We are doing maybe 2-3 things. One is to again look at what happened in Baku in Azerbaijan at the COP29. As a group we meet and look at the outcomes. What did we gain, what did we not gain? Then, as you may have heard already, the next conference of the parties will be held in Brazil, in Beda, in the Amazon region in November. But also a preparatory session will be held in Bonn, Germany in June. So the group will also be preparing for those, so that when we go into those meetings, we are ready as a group. We have our priority areas, and then we speak as one group with one voice.
Delegates to the meeting have agreed that time has come for the 46-member country group to ensure that priorities are synchronized and clear ahead of COP30 in Brazil. What is also clear is that affected countries want to build coherence in the light of shifting global geopolitical dynamics that impact climate finance. Malawi is hosting the meeting as chairperson of the United Nations Group of the Least Developed Countries, LDCs, on climate change. George Muhango, Channel Africa News, Blantyre.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
16 minutes past 7 Central African time. It is here on Africa Rise and Shine. After a deadly Russian strike on Sumy, Ukraine on Sunday, which killed at least 34 people, including 2 children, and injured over 100, the UN Children's Fund, or UNICEF, has renewed its call for an end to the war. Jinan Ramadan, chief of UNICEF's field office in Kharkiv, has just returned from a mission to assess the situation in Sumy. Her office, which also coordinates humanitarian aid for the region, visited the local children's hospital where many young victims are being treated. In an interview with UN News' Evgenia Klesheva, Ramadan shared powerful accounts of the suffering she witnessed, from traumatized families to injured children, and highlighted the critical support UNICEF is providing in the wake of the tragedy.
As the whole world heard, the attack was very deadly in Sumy city center. Over 117 injured people were recorded, and that included over 17 children as well. In addition, around 34 people were killed, including 2 children, unfortunately, as well. Today, UNICEF mission visited Sumy. Specifically, we started our visit with the Regional Children's Hospital, where we met with the local authorities. Also, we met with the director of the hospital, and we visited the injured families, and we also visited the children inside the hospital. Out of the hospitalized 17 children, there were still 15 children there in the facility. 4 of them are still in the intensive care unit. We witnessed the heartbreaking, let's say, situation of the families. The injuries that we have seen, it included a lot of sharp nails penetrating the bodies of the children and the parents as well. Some of these injuries were quite visible. Others were covered with the whole band-aids and everything, because it targeted a lot of different parts from the body. Some of the families that we have met, they were very emotional. The moment you start talking about the incident, or you show them support and you tell them, like, we're so happy to see you're safe and sound, and we're here for the support, they started crying. You know, I mean, most of the impacted people, they're still under a lot of, let's say, trauma and under a lot of stress. That's why it was very important for us as UNICEF to go and witness the situation on the ground so we can further assess how we can help these families. Most of the children that they were impacted, the age group varied. We started with a very cute 2-year-old Lisa, who was impacted by this attack. She was in one of the buses that got impacted yesterday in the city center, and her mother was also accompanying her. Unfortunately, cute Lisa, she had a lot of cuts on her face, but yet she was very smiley and very cheerful because we came with the cute souvenirs. You know, when you're approaching kids, there is a special approach for them, and like she even played with us. But you can see the emotional distress on the mother and on the father. We're just so happy to really feel that Lisa was safe and nothing drastic happened to their child. Similar to other cases as well. Very interesting story actually we came across was about a young adolescent, a boy named Kerello. Kerello was walking with his mother also around the city center, and also Kerello was a hero because he didn't flee after the first strike. He rushed to also grab people outside of the bus and help them to get out and help them. He was very brave and he spoke to us, and also he told us like, I couldn't leave, I had to help other people. Kerello also, he faced some injuries. There were band-aids over his head and his hand as well.
And what are UNICEF's immediate priorities now, and what kind of support is being offered?
Usually as a humanitarian response, UNICEF, we have implementing partners on the ground. Whenever an on-site attack happens, we deploy emergency teams. They provide emergency supplies. They make sure people are attended to. And also there is immediate MHPSS teams deployed on the ground as a first aid psychological support. At this stage, you know, the trauma is there. So we attend to the needs as much as we can. If there is any medical assistance needed, we help in the referral mechanisms as well in coordination with other partners on the ground. Once the first layer of the response or the first line response happens, then we make sure that families are receiving emergency supplies, further specialized MHPSS support through a specialized partner where they do proper registry. Also, there is case management for children and caregivers where they follow up on the cases, and also emergency cash support for children and their impacted families as well.
What kind of support is needed from the international community? What does UNICEF need? Is there anything you want to say on that?
In terms of support, I mean, the needs are high. In terms of the immediate support, of course, I mean, as you are aware and everyone is aware, the impact on the civilian infrastructure is very big. So in such cases, most of the surrounding residential building got impacted. That means a lot of windows got shattered, a lot of damages happened to the residential buildings. For example, also a nearby educational facility was impacted. This attack, for this incident specifically, it struck the university center over there in the heart of the city, and usually most of the meetings happen there. It's Sumska State University, so it's a civilian also facility. This one got heavily impacted, where most of the meetings, most of the recreational activities and cultural events happened in the heart of the city of Sumy. So usually whenever these attack happens, there is a need for shelter, there is a need for medical assistance, there is a need for immediate assistance to the families. But from our experience in the past 2 years, what we have seen and what we have witnessed is the psychosocial support is very much needed. Also the cash support is needed for the families, because most of their families, either they got injured on the site of the attack, or they lost their houses, or their houses got impacted. And usually it takes a lot of time for the local authorities to be able to rehabilitate these houses so it can be livable again by the civilians. From our mandate, we attend to the needs of children and caregivers. We focus on the cash assistance. We focus on the emergency supplies that includes specialized and customized kits for children, and also the hygiene kits that serves the whole family, and that is being complemented by the case management, the mental health support, and the cash component, which is very crucial in our assistance.
That was Jinan Ramadan, Chief of UNICEF's Field Office in Kharkiv.
Je, una jambo lolote akilini mwako? Je, una shauku kuhusu masuala muhimu? Na je, una maoni ambayo unataka yasikike? Kweli, hili jukwaa ni la kwako. Piga simu au tuandikie kwenda WhatsApp namba alama ya kujumulisha 2760552594 na tutakupigia simu.
Mtangazaji wa habari zetu za Afrika Kusini mjini Johannesburg.
Hivyo unaweza kuwa mshirika kwenye matangazo yetu. Sio mazungumzo tu, ni fursa yako ya kuchangia maoni yako na kushirikiana na jumuiya ya wasikilizaji wanaotamani mtazamo wako. Tufuate kwenye mitandao ya kijamii. Tembelea tovuti yetu www.channelafrica.co.za na uwe tayari kushiriki na kuchangia maoni yako kwenye Channel Africa. Channel Africa, mtazamo wa Kiafrika.
Você é fluente em português? É apaixonado por rádio e quer trabalhar na África do Sul? Você tem documentos que qualificam para trabalhar na África do Sul? Nesse caso, podemos ter uma oportunidade para você trabalhar no Canal África. Envie seu currículo e demonstração para Canal África newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Lembre-se, se você não receber alguma resposta nossa em 14 dias, isso significa que você não foi selecionado. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
African trade ministers meeting in the Democratic Republic of Congo have agreed to fast-track policies that will promote trade within the continent in order to reduce their reliance on foreign markets. The move comes a few weeks after the United States imposed a 10% tariff on imports from African countries. Chris Ochamringa has more from Kinshasa.
54 trade ministers from across the African continent converged on the DRC capital, Kinshasa, for the 16th Council of Trade Ministers of the African Continental Free Trade Area. Their free trade bloc seeks to create a single market for goods and services across Africa. Economists, policymakers, and the DRC President, Felix Tshisekedi, attended the event and called for the implementation of policies that promote trade in the continent. Their meeting comes a few weeks after the U.S. imposed a 10% tariff on imports from African countries.
One of the challenges that remains ahead of us, which we have to confront with the support of our heads of states, the Assembly of the heads of states and government of the African Union, is the current global context. The current challenging global context where we see fragmentation of geopolitical and geoeconomic environments, where we see economic nationalism, investment nationalism, and weaponization of trade policy for the benefit of just but one member of the global community.
The tariffs introduced by U.S. President Donald Trump will increase operating costs for African exporters, many of whom have been relying on preferential trade agreements like the African Growth and Opportunity Act to access U.S. markets. African leaders are now seeking to strengthen their partnership and reduce trade barriers to address the challenge, but they face logistical and political challenges to realize their goal. Chris Ochamringa, SABC News, Kinshasa.
Hundreds of Tunisians took to the streets yesterday in widespread protests demanding accountability after 3 students died on Monday following a school wall collapse in the central town of Mazuna. The incident provoked widespread anger and accusations of negligence against officials. The collapse of a dilapidated wall led to the death of 3 teenage students preparing for their baccalaureate exams, and 2 others were seriously injured. We're joined on the line now by journalist in Tunisia, Imen Bilwa. Imen, good morning to you and thank you for making time.
Good morning. Thank you for having me and for speaking about this today.
So this will be a short one if we can keep our answers a bit brief because we're going to run out of time in a bit. But we just want to get the gist of what happened. Take us through what led to the widespread protests. On the one side is a dilapidated wall. On the other is the response. And some accusing negligence against the officials and how they responded. What's the main issue?
Sure. So mainly to be clear and to understand the circumstances of the situation, today in Tunisia is a very tense time. There is a huge inflation. There is a huge neglection of citizen demand to have a kind of an economic revolution that saves everyone. And during those circumstances, there are a lot of events going on. Among them is a very important incident and very sad one, which the fall of a wall of a school on a group of students. This actually shows really bad maintenance for many public schools, and it has been going on that people in Tunisia asking for support for the public school. It's not only to fix walls, also to fix the situation in the public education.
Why does there seem to be...
This is what happened.
Yes. Why does there seem to be underinvestment by the government when it comes to the buildings and infrastructure for schools?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? It's not clear.
Why does there seem to be underinvestments when it comes to the infrastructure and buildings of schools by the government of Tunisia, as some protesters have accused?
Well, the Tunisian people hold the Tunisian government accountable for not taking care of their own students. This is a public school that has not been taken care in one of the poorest region in Tunisia, in Mazuna, in Sidi Bouzid, and the place is not fixed, even though one of the responsible from the government visited the place and just had a plan to fix the place. So the protest that went on Tuesday were demanding accountability. 3 students actually died on Monday following a school wall collapse. This is what happened, and this is not acceptable by the Tunisians, just to lose 3 students over neglection, over official not doing their job. The main point is to hold whoever did this neglection accountable for their deeds, and to do better in school all over Tunisia, especially in public school.
What happens?
There was a response from the government. Sorry?
Has the government responded in terms of the family who have dealt, these 3 families who have dealt with these losses, yes?
True. The President of the Republic, Qais Said, expressed his regret, his great pain at the death of a number of students, these 3 in Sidi Bouzid state. As you know, Sidi Bouzid is the start of the place where the revolution actually started. These people always demand for a better living, and even after the revolution, I visited Sidi Bouzid and spoke to responsible people and to the people there. They didn't have anything changed, anything developed, any achievement. They're asking for economic support. They're asking for job opportunity in Sidi Bouzid, not in the capital. So they want this place that started the Tunisian revolution to be taken care of, to be supported economically speaking, and that did not happen since 2011, since the revolution. This actually created great tension in Tunisia, and for Tunisian, and the protests were made by many Tunisian, not only people in Sidi Bouzid, all over Tunisia, asking for a fair judgment, accountability for those students.
Yeah, well, our condolences to the families of those 3 students, as well as those students who are directly impacted by all that's going on in Tunisia. Imen, we'll leave it there for today. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Have a nice one.
Imen Bilwa is journalist in Tunisia. 33 minutes past 7 Central African Time. Good morning, Jolane Tulo Mwepe with news headlines.
SABC News.
Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Making headlines. Sudan's paramilitaries have declared the formation of a rival government to the country's armed forces. Yesterday marked 2 years since the start of the war that has become the world's largest humanitarian crisis. The Speaker of South Africa's Parliament, Togo Didiza, has been elected chairperson of the Africa Group of the Inter-Parliamentary Union Assembly in Uzbekistan. And finally, the International Organization for Migration says Haiti faces one of the most complex and urgent crises in the world. The organization's head, Amy Pope, says gang violence and instability have displaced more than 1 million people. I will have details on these and other stories at 8 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African.
Let's get our sports news now with Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
And we begin with the football news this hour. A total of 12 African referees have been selected to officiate at the 2025 FIFA Club World Cup, which will take place in the United States from the 14th of June to the 13th of July. The referees are part of a pool of 117 officials selected from 41 FIFA member nations for the impending tournament. The competition will see Africa presenting 5 center referees, 5 assistant referees, as well as 2 referees who will be in the VAR section. The rise in the number of officials from Africa at the biggest stage in the club football is good for the continent, which has experienced officiating issues in the domestic leagues over the years. The 4 teams representing Africa at the tournament are Al Ahly of Egypt, Mamelodi Sundowns of South Africa, Esperance of Tunisia, and Moroccan giants Wydad. South African Sports Confederation and Olympic Committee is currently still undergoing a slow consultative process to bid for the 2036 or 2040 Olympic and Paralympic Games. SASCOC will wait for the support and go ahead from the national government before it formally starts the bidding process. SASCOC President Barry Hendricks says as many as 11 countries are bidding for those games.
We're in the consultation phase now. There's no bid at this stage. And you must remember, if we bid for the Olympics, it stands to reason that there will be the Paralympics afterwards. So if we are successful in our bid, in our current consultative phase, it's 2036 as well as 2040 that we're looking at. Because there are 11 countries bidding for 2036.
There is an added incentive for the host countries that will boost their bidding process, hosting the games in more than one city. France used the capital city Paris and Marseille as host cities for last year's games. Hendrik says SASCOC might look at the possibility of using 2 or 3 cities for the purpose.
The whole dynamics of hosting the Olympics has changed. Away from building permanent facilities, using temporary facilities. If you look at how Paris was able to disassemble all the facilities like the volleyball, we must look at it as well and identify various cities throughout South Africa. So it might not be one city. It might be 1 or 3 cities that can host these games in future.
And our tennis news, British number 3 Cameron Norrie has suffered a first-round exit at the Barcelona Open as he prepares for the start of the French Open this month. Norrie, now ranked 88 in the world rankings and who came through qualifying in Barcelona, was beaten 6-7, 3-7, 6-4, 6-3 by 27th ranked Karen Khachanov of Russia. Former Wimbledon semi-finalist Norrie saved a set point on his way to winning the first set on a tie-break and led 4-3 with a break in the second. But Khachanov came back to progress in 2 hours and 18 minutes and will face Joan Munar of Spain in the next round. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fidel Nwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Big news from Channel Africa. Now you can listen and watch your favorite shows on Channel Africa. Channel Africa is streaming live on the internet on all our social media pages at Channel Africa 1. from 6 a.m. till 9 p.m. Central African Time. Download the SABC Plus app or visit our website www.channelafrica.co.za and stream us live on all our social media pages at Channel Africa 1. Channel Africa now streaming for your eyes and ears only. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
All right, let's get our economics update now with Tabiso Lehuku here on Africa Rise and Shine.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. Mozambican health professionals have announced that they will down tools tomorrow. They say the strike action will see the professionals only work 8 hours a day and will suspend working on weekends. Milton Malulek reports.
At stake are the demands of the Association of United and Solidarity Health Professionals of Mozambique, which for 3 years has been asking the government to provide medicines to hospitals, purchase hospital beds, resolve the lack of food, equip ambulance with emergency materials and non-dispensable personal protective equipment, pay overtime, and improve the framework within the scope of the single salary table.
Canadian gold mining company B2Gold has announced the plans to cut 300 jobs in Namibia this year as it goes ahead with the phased downscaling of operations at its Otjikoto mine after depletion of open pit reserves. The Otjikoto mine produced a record 198,142 ounces of gold last year. Shanduko Lekeke has the details.
Open pit mining at the mine is expected to cease this year following the depletion of gold ore, but the company will continue processing stockpiles at least until 2032. The mine's current underground operations are expected to run until 2027, with an extension possible if going exploration successfully uncovers additional mineral deposits. B2Gold's phased reduction of operations in Namibia began in the first quarter of 2024, with 130 employees laid off during the year.
Nigeria's headline consumer inflation urged up to 24.23% year-on-year in March from 23.18% in February. A report by the National Bureau of Statistics showed price rises for food and non-alcoholic beverages were the biggest contributor to annual inflation. Inflation in Nigeria soared to repeated 28-year peaks last year, spurred by President Bola Tinubu's moves to curb costly subsidies and devalue the naira currency after he came to power in 2023. West Africa-focused oil and gas explorer Tullow Oil says it will sell its assets in Kenya to Gulf Energy Limited for at least $120 million as it works to reduce its debt. In a statement, Tullow will get $340 million payments, be entitled to royalty payments, and have the right to 30% participation in potential future development phases at no cost. Buntle Headbush has the details.
The company's Kenyan oil fields have not been brought into full production as any export route would require building hundreds of miles of a heated pipeline to the coast. It recorded a $145 million write-off on these operations last year. Last month, Tullow agreed to sell its working interest in Gabon for $300 million in cash. It had a net debt of around $1.5 billion at the end of last year.
Nissan will cut Japanese production of its top-selling U.S. model, the Rogue SUV, over mid-July, becoming the latest global automaker to alter manufacturing plans in response to new U.S. import tariffs. This report by Reuters.
Donald Trump's decision to slap a 25% levy on cars built overseas has upended the global automotive supply chain. Nissan is Japan's third largest car maker and is more exposed than some rivals. The US is its top market and accounts for more than a quarter of the vehicles it sold last year. Many of those were made in Japan and Mexico.
$1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 603, Botswana 13 pula 76, Kenya 128 shilling 853, and Zambia 28 kwacha 28. The BRICS countries $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 86, Russia 82 rubles 373, India 85 rupees 76, China 71 30, and in South Africa the dollar will cost you 18 rand 93. $1 is trading at 75 pence to the British pound and 80 $1.88 to the euro. A look at commodities markets now. Gold is trading at $3,267 and platinum at $9.56 per ounce, while Brent crude oil is at $64.53 a barrel. For any business stories that you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459 for Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg. I'm Tabisolo Huku.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
44 minutes past 7 Central African time, and let's go to Nigeria now, where health authorities and experts have recently met to address critical challenges in emergency care and explore solutions for a more efficient and responsive emergency care system in the country. It is reported that Nigeria has only 0.4 ambulances available per 100,000 people. This ratio is far below the World Health Organization's recommendation of 1 ambulance per 10,000 people. To discuss this and what came out of the summit, we're joined on the line by Folake Owoduni, who is co-founder and CEO of Emergency Response Africa, or ERA, a healthcare technology company that is changing how medical emergencies are managed in Africa, starting with Nigeria. Folake, thank you for joining us. Good morning.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
It's our pleasure. 0.4 ambulances available per 100,000 people instead of 1 ambulance per 10,000 people. It seems like an underfunding and lack of infrastructure issue. Is that the main problem in Nigeria?
Please.
How much of an... Hello?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yes, can you hear me? Hello, Folake?
Yes, hello, I can hear you.
Okay, do I need to repeat my previous point? Did you get that? The ratio in terms of statistics, can you hear me?
Yes.
0.4 ambulances available per 100,000 people instead of the WHO's recommendation of 1 ambulance per 10,000 people. That would seem like an underfunding or lack of infrastructure issue. Is that what the main problem in Nigeria's health sector is?
So there are a number of problems. That what you've mentioned is just one of them. The reality is that emergency medical services is a system comprised of multiple parts. So the assets or the equipment, like the ambulances, are just one piece of the puzzle. And you're right, we definitely don't have enough in terms of the number that's required to serve Nigeria's large population. But beyond that, we also have issues with things like staffing. You have to have qualified pre-hospital care workers in order to actually use those ambulances. Otherwise, they're literally just vehicles, which could be any type of vehicle. And one of the challenges is that we don't have enough institutions that are training and qualifying emergency medical technicians and paramedics. And so oftentimes ambulances will be staffed by other healthcare workers, whether they are actually qualified or trained to provide pre-hospital care or not. Other things like communications is a key challenge. What number do people call? When they call, are they actually going to receive someone picking up the phone who knows what to do? Those are challenges that people face, especially when you get to the harder to reach areas like the rural areas. Connectivity becomes a problem. So this is a system, and the reality is that in order to fix a system, you can't just address one part. The ambulances are the easiest things to mention, but there's so many other pieces of the puzzle that need to be solved in order for this system to work well.
In a lot of cases, emergency care begins at the scene. So what about scene care? Do you find that now bystanders or community members come to the rescue of the injured? And what dangers can this pose? As much as some help is better than none.
Absolutely, you're completely correct. And the reality is that in Nigeria and in Africa broadly, that is what we need to look to. This idea of first responders within the community who at least have some basic training, they can get to the scene very quickly and provide some support while professional help is on the way. And that's really what our organization, Emergency Response Africa, does. Our focus is really on leveraging trained community first responders and technology to connect them to care, to provide care at the scene, and then connect them into a broader professional network of ambulances and paramedics that can then get the patient over to hospital. And so you're absolutely right. I think the challenge is that generally we have a very large population that is uneducated about how to recognize emergencies as well as how to respond appropriately. And so instead, what people will oftentimes do is they will do all the wrong things. They'll put somebody on their back and start running, or in the back of a vehicle. They won't immobilize them properly. Some people will bring out their phones and start taking pictures or making videos. They will do everything that they ought not to do instead of the most important thing, which is survival. So we want to make sure that more people in the community actually know what to do, and they can make sure that people get care all the way through.
So talk to us about Emergency Response Africa ERA, your healthcare technology company, and how you are changing how medical emergencies are managed in Africa, maybe also feeding into some of the discussions from the summit.
Asanda, can you say that again, please?
Let's get more information in terms of Emergency Response Africa, your healthcare technology company,
sure,
and how you are changing how medical emergencies are managed in Africa, and maybe feeding into some of the points that came out from the summit.
Oh, absolutely. So Emergency Response Africa, like I mentioned, is a healthcare technology company. We are based in Nigeria, and our focus is really on connecting people to help in an emergency as quickly as possible. The approach is to identify and train individuals within communities as first responders, or community-based first responders as we call them, and then also create a large network of ambulances, hospitals, just emergency response providers, so that with a single call or request to us, an individual who's experiencing an emergency is connected to the closest available source of help. And what that does is that it allows them to get care much more quickly, all the way from the scene of the emergency through to the hospital where they are handed over. And Emergency Response Africa currently operates in about 11 different cities within Nigeria. We've built a robust partnership network, and we work with both the private sector and the public sector. So on the private sector side, as you can imagine, insurers, corporate companies, they want to protect their staff. But we know that most people cannot afford to pay the cost of emergency services. And that's why we also partner with the government. And so the pre-hospital emergency care stakeholder summit that we held on March 27th was actually our effort to bring together a number of public sector stakeholders to share some of the learnings and insights that we've gained in working with 3 different state governments, and identify persistent challenges as well as possible solutions. So it was a really great convening of stakeholders. We identified a number of challenges across training and capacity building for the people that need to provide pre-hospital care. We talked extensively about communications as a challenge, even something as simple as having a unified emergency number that everybody knows and everybody calls and that they can rely on is a key issue. And then finally, we talked about the role of trust in actually driving adoption for emergency services. People want to know that, if I call this number, somebody will respond, somebody will come in a timely manner. If somebody comes, they actually know what they're doing. They're going to treat me appropriately. And if I get to the hospital is not going to turn me away. There are a couple of high-profile emergency incidents that have gone on in the last month or so, in Nigeria, and they've really highlighted just so many breaks in that system. And so our focus as Emergency Response Africa is to try to close those gaps.
Okay.
And we know that it's not something we can do on our own. It's so important that we do it in collaboration. And so that pre-hospital stakeholder summit was really our first effort to bring stakeholders together and really ideate on solutions to close the gap.
Thank you so much, Folake. We're going to leave it there for today. Appreciating your time again here on Channel Africa.
Thank you so much for having me.
Folake Owodunni is the co-founder and CEO of Emergency Response Africa, a healthcare technology company.
Big news from Channel Africa. Now you can listen and watch your favorite shows on Channel Africa. Channel Africa is streaming live on the internet on all our social media pages at Channel Africa 1 from 6 a.m. till 9 p.m. Central African Time. Download the SABC Plus app or visit our website www.channelafrica.co.za and stream us live on all our social media pages at Channel Africa 1. Channel Africa now streaming for your eyes and ears only. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Africa Update on Channel Africa with Lulu Kabu.
The United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, reports that over 3 million children are involved in prostitution globally, while the International Labour Organization estimates that 1 million people are trafficked annually for sexual exploitation. Many victims are lured with false promises of a better future.
We have serious problems, Lulu. One, we had porous borders, easy access of these criminal transnational syndicates coming in and living at ease. Number one. Number two, we also have a problem where some of our law enforcement officers, those who are rogue, who work hand in glove with the syndicates because they give them something in return of them turning a blind eye. Point number three, we have a problem of corruption that leads to us being a playground of this transnational organized crime.
Africa Update with Lulu Kabu, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time. A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
A recent report by international women's rights organization Equality Now, titled Barriers to Justice, Rape in Africa, Law, Practice and Access to Justice, highlights that rape cases are frequently dismissed due to a lack of evidence, and many do not make it to full trial due to lack of evidence or incomplete investigation files. The research reveals that across Africa, rape is one of the most common crimes. It shows how inadequate criminalization of rape, weak legal implementation, rape myths, and victim blaming are just some of the barriers to justice that survivors face. Let's discuss this with Jean-Paul Murunga, who is Senior Programs Officer for Ending Sexual Violence at Equality Now. Good morning, Jean-Paul. Thanks for making time.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. What are the reasons for an incomplete investigation file, which end up resulting in many cases not making it to full trial?
From our experience, what we have seen is that one, there is no awareness in the communities. People do not know, for instance, where to report whenever these incidents happen. So when a child is raped or someone is raped, the information about where to report is very little in the community. So there's no awareness about that. But also the response, for example, for those who know where to report, when they go to the police stations, the police officers do not receive them well in some cases. They are blamed, as you've mentioned, victim blaming. So they are asked, what are you wearing? Why are you working at night? So that really deters other people from reporting, because they know when they report, they will be put on the spot. And then also there is a social acceptance of rape in many African communities where it is not seen as a serious offense. So the communities sometimes try to compromise with the perpetrator and provide, for example, compensation to avoid this case from going to court. Or in certain cases allows the perpetrator, for example, to marry the victim, especially in cases where the victim is a child or a very young person, and that also compromises the whole legal justice process. The other aspect also is the delay in the legal process. So then if someone reports and the case takes like 8 years or 7 years or 4 years, then another survivor will feel like this is really not providing justice. So they will feel not to report. They will just be silent to themselves, well, they know the system will delay them, and they will spend a lot. Sometimes the court station is very far from where they live, so they have to spend a lot on transport, and therefore they will opt just to heal by themselves. Those are some of the challenges that the survivors face when they are trying to seek justice.
Is there a difference, have you found, as Equality Now, when it comes to access to justice between rape cases emanating from war and instability versus those that occur in everyday life, for lack of a better term?
Yeah, so persons with disabilities really face additional barriers. So, for example, a lot of our stations, be it the police stations or the court stations, do not have access. For example, persons with mobility disability, women and girls who have mobility disabilities, accessing those stations will be difficult for them. Their caregivers will not be willing to go through that difficulty. For example, also in other cases where someone has a disability in speaking, then sign language sometimes is missing in some of the stations, and that also delays justice. So the court station has to plan and get a sign language interpreter, and that takes time because these are not readily available both in the police stations and also in the court stations, and therefore someone will not want to go through that prolonged process. They would rather just stay at home, heal. We've also seen cases where persons with disabilities, especially children, are left unattended. So when they are left unattended, then the perpetrators come and overpower them and rape them, and they are not able to speak out about this, and this is repeated, and in certain cases it leads to death. So we've also seen those cases.
The implications as a result of these obstacles that women and girls who are survivors of rape face as second victimization or trauma, these will be dire. So what other forms of accessing justice and support can these survivors seek?
Yes, so what we are recommending, a call to action for both the governments but also civil society organizations that are working to promote access to justice, especially for survivors of rape, is that we are asking for more investment in law enforcement, having officers who are trained to speak to survivors in a friendly manner, do not victim blame them, and also ensure that every case that is reported is effectively investigated. We've also seen cases where the officers lack even things like fuel to go and visit the scene where the crime happened, where the rape happened. So then they put it on the survivor or the survivor's guardians or parents to basically be the one to pay that, and that of course leads to denial of justice. What we are also recommending is that the legal system, the laws that define rape, need to be wide enough to cover all forms of sexual assault. So we've seen cases where, for example, intimate partner sexual assault, rape in marriages or in intimate relationships are not recognized in some laws. So then that denies justice. So we are just seeking for legal reform to ensure that the laws are wide enough to cover all forms of rape, despite the kind of relationship that exists between the survivor and the perpetrator. We are also calling for additional psychosocial support for survivors and a long-term, not just immediate counseling after the rape, but then long-term, so that because the trauma that comes with rape is a lifelong trauma, therefore need for a long-term counseling. But we've seen most governments only provide 3 months counseling or 6 months counseling and assume that the survivor has fully recovered. But in most cases, the survivors relapse, and those ordeals keep on recurring in their minds, and therefore they're not able to participate fully even in the economic activities. Or if it is a child who is accessing education, they're not participating fully in education because that trauma keep on recurring. So we are calling for those systems and those mechanisms to be strengthened and fully financed so that survivors of rape can access justice. But finally, more so, we are calling for prevention, because there are systems that can prevent and detect these cases. For example, in South Africa, there is the register of sexual offenders. People to be known that they are offenders so that they are deterred from further perpetration. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Jean-Paul Murunga is Senior Programs Officer for Ending Sexual Violence at Equality Now. Bringing us to 2 minutes past 8 Central African Time as we enter the third and final hour of Rise and Shine. Let's say good morning to Jolane Tulo Mwepe for news, and Fikilele Mwati after her with sports headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Sudan's paramilitaries have declared the formation of a rival government to the country's armed forces. Yesterday marked 2 years since the start of the war that has become the world's largest humanitarian crisis. The leader of the Rapid Support Forces, Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, said the group was, quote, building the only realistic future for Sudan. Fighting raged on, with the army saying it had bombed RSF positions outside the city of Al Fasher, forcing hundreds of thousands to flee the Zamzam refugee camp. Meanwhile, the US has strongly condemned violence inflicted on civilians and aid workers in placement camps in western Sudan. Hundreds of thousands of people have fled from the Zamzam camp, which the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces recently captured. A conference in London has called for an immediate ceasefire in Sudan. The UN's George Moreira da Silva is in Port Sudan.
We need peace. But we also need humanitarian aid to be provided at scale and at speed. It's important to find a good negotiation path, to have a genuine dialogue among parties to stop this war. This is probably the largest humanitarian crisis in the world.
The inquest into the death of South Africa's liberation struggle stalwart Chief Albert Luthuli continues in the Pietermaritzburg High Court in the KwaZulu-Natal province. His daughter-in-law, Wilhelmina Luthuli, will again testify this morning. At the time of his death, Luthuli was the leader of the then banned African National Congress Party. He won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1960 for spearheading the fight against apartheid. The original inquest found that he was hit by a train at Groundville in the KwaZulu-Natal North Coast, but there were no pictures of the scene. Wilhelmina Luthuli has told the inquest the family has no doubt that their home was closely watched by the apartheid security police.
One would wake up and find a car standing near the hedge. Policemen, black and white, would be seated in the vehicle, just watching our home. If we had a visitor at home, a few minutes later, a special branch police vehicle would be parked outside. There was no doubt that we were watched.
South Africa's Higher Education Minister Nobuhle Nkabane is expected to visit the Walter Sisulu University's Mthatha campus in the Eastern Cape province. This after a student was fatally shot and several others wounded during a students' protest yesterday. The students' issues include a lack of residence placements. University management has condemned all forms of violence and intimidation on campus. Higher Education Department spokesperson Kamagweni Mavovana says the minister is concerned about the situation.
The minister conveys her sincere condolences to the family of the deceased and wishes a full and speedy recovery to those who sustained injuries. Dr. Nkabane is resolute that no student should ever be harmed while accessing their right to education. This must be the last time we are forced to respond to such a tragedy at our institutions of higher learning.
The International Organization for Migration says Haiti faces one of the most complex and urgent crises in the world. The organization's head, Amy Pope, says gang violence and instability have displaced more than 1 million people. She has urged the international community to support the Caribbean country. The BBC's Peter Galvin has the story.
Speaking in the Haitian capital, Port-au-Prince, the IOM chief said criminal gangs now control vast sections of the city. Many families have been forced to flee several times in a matter of weeks, leaving them without access to shelter or water. The UN says more than 1,500 Haitians were killed in the first 3 months of this year, a result of gang attacks, operations by security forces, and other violence. Observers say gangs have ransacked homes, committed acts of sexual violence, and executed men, women, and children.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo Webe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Our sports headlines. The World Sport Football Governing Body has directed Football Association of Zambia to hold its elective annual general meeting within 21 days. SASCOC is undergoing a slow consultative process to bid for the 2036 or 2040 Olympic and Paralympic Games. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
An investigation by South Africa's non-profit organization Open Secrets has found that telecoms company MTN has played a role in shutting down the internet during elections and wars in Sudan, Cameroon, Iran, Afghanistan and Uganda, thus enabling governments to silence the opposition.
Interestingly, this isn't just unique to MTN. I think the report also looks at Vodacom DRC as being a proponent of one of these violations, particularly in shutting down the internet during the elections in 2018 and 2019. Autocratic regimes are able to utilize the licenses that they have with these telecom companies, basically to suppress political dissent. And the result is that many people are left without connectivity. And not only does this affect people's ability to communicate with their loved ones and access vital emergency services, but also at a very basic level of access to information.
The Open Secrets investigator for
Africa in Business on Channel Africa. Weekdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Central African Time. The Midnight Snack every Monday, 12 to 3 a.m. with Chanduko Ligege.
That is just me trying to imagine myself as a backup singer for Zonke because her music is just beautiful. As the song was playing, I was just, moving like a backup singer. You know how they are, with their hands being so dramatic and, putting that spice into the song. So the song is called Say Now and we love it here on the Midnight Snack. I hope you also love it.
Let's talk love, intimacy, and relationships on the Midnight Snack with Chanduko Ligege. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Grande nouvelle à Channel Africa. Vous pouvez désormais écouter et regarder vos émissions préférées sur Channel Africa. Channel Africa diffuse maintenant en direct sur Internet et sur tous nos réseaux sociaux de 6h à 21h, heure d'Afrique centrale. Sur Channel Africa 1. Téléchargez l'application SABC+, ou visitez notre site internet www.channelafrica.co.za et rejoignez-nous en direct sur toutes nos pages réseaux sociaux Channel Africa 1. Channel Africa est désormais en diffusion audiovisuelle uniquement pour le plaisir de vos yeux et vos oreilles. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go.
10 minutes past 8 Central African Time, and it's a Wednesday. As promised, we have our profile. This is a day that we dedicate to shine the spotlight on an African doing great things. And this morning we speak to British Ghanaian engineer and tech entrepreneur Danny Manu, who built the world's first auto translator earbuds. He is also the founder and CEO of My Manu, a tech company. He joins us on the line. A very good morning to you, Danny. Thank you for making time.
Good morning, and thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. I mean, we are very inspired by this story. As I was going through this, I was even saying that we should be calling you a maverick. You've gone beyond being a tech entrepreneur. You are an innovator or an inventor. Is that how you see yourself, as an inventor?
Absolutely, but I've got a very strong passion of developing products to support people's lives. So yeah, you can put that on my list as an inventor.
Awesome. So let's talk about these earbuds. The auto translator earbuds. It's the world's first, and they translate 40 languages. Tell us more.
Yes, I mean, I was inspired. This is something that I was really inspired when I was developing it because of my heritage. I have a Ghanaian heritage, and as you already know, in Africa, there's hundreds of languages. So building a technology that enabled us to communicate and also do business was something that I was super passionate about. The current products which translate actually replaces your phone as well, so you're able to do the translation without your mobile phone. And as you speak, it plays out from the actual earbud case so that the other person will be able to hear what you are saying in their own language and vice versa. We have also allowed it to be able to use for normal phone calls. So, you can call someone abroad and just speak, English or any language, and then the person will be able to hear you in their own language, regardless of the platform you use. So you can call someone on the landline, WhatsApp, Zoom, Teams, and you can still have a decent conversation.
So this product is called Click. How do these earbuds sit and work? You mentioned that they allow one to converse effortlessly in a language they don't know necessarily. So I can speak Mandarin, basically. I don't even know a word of Mandarin, but I can. How do they?
Yeah, absolutely.
How do they sit and how do they actually work?
Yes, so you put it in your ear. And you just select your selected language. So you as an individual, if you are English, you have English always selected. So if you were to talk to someone in Mandarin and you were to meet that person on the street, you press a button and you speak, and then the translation will play out from the actual earbud case for the other person to hear you, and vice versa. So as the other person speaks, you'll be able to hear the translation. This is how it works in in-person conversation. So, if you were actually meeting someone face to face. But let's say, I'm here in the UK and I've got a friend in Japan and I really want to call that person. This is also possible. I could actually make a phone call and speak English, and the person will be able to hear me in Japanese, regardless of the platform I use to make the actual phone call.
Wow. And Peter Ndoro, my co-host, who's not here today, I'm sure would be chipping in now because he's trying to learn French and he's trying to teach me in the process. So here we go. Here's a device for us. Does this device need data or Wi-Fi?
You can do offline translation if you are in person conversation. So if I'm with you face to face and I want to talk to you, there's three main connectivity. I can use it without internet, and then I can use it with Wi-Fi, or I can use it with eSIM. So you can buy data and upload it to it. But if you are using it for a phone call, like a longer phone call or a long distance phone call, then it relies on data, just like the way you use WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger and stuff like that.
Yeah, it would make sense. That's how we use things, our devices anyway. And how long does the translation process of the earbuds typically take? Does also network connection affect its speed? So in terms of from the time that I speak until it translates for me, what's that time frame?
Yeah, a couple of milliseconds, and it will translate. So it's got a very smart system. When the system detects a sentence, it will actually start translating a sentence that makes sense. It will start translating, and we also have a solution which is normally used by businesses. So last 2 years we received grant from the UK government to further develop the solution so that it can be used in schools, events, and also in the immigration service. And what this allows you to do is you can actually host a complete conference. So let's say, I'm speaking on stage and all the audience, are from different countries. We also have a solution for businesses that actually allow you to present on stage and translate to multiple people in their own language, like the UN style, if you know what I'm trying to say, that kind of stuff. We already have a solution that does that. And that translation actually starts instantly. So as I start speaking, it will start, detecting it and start translating it.
This is amazing, Denny. And from the time that this was an idea to getting the patent done and then the final product, how long was that process?
God, that was a long journey. In terms of early stage, when I started the first invention, this took about 2-3 years in R&D because there wasn't any technology like that. I was one of the first engineers who introduced true wireless earbud. The AirPods that everyone is using. I was one of the early engineers that introduced it. The challenges we had was there wasn't any chipset, so there wasn't any big company developing multiple microchips for us to actually use, pick from the shelf and then you use it for your product development. There's what a lot of innovators do. You look at technologies that are available, components that are available, and you're able to put them together to create a unique product. In our case, there was nothing like that, so we built everything from the ground up, including some of the chipsets we use. So it took us a really long time, and those times, talking back in 2014 when the first product was introduced, touch control on earbud was something new. Was like a science fiction when you're talking to someone about touch control on an earbud. So we had to also educate people, which was really, really difficult to actually get people to understand. Actually, you have to touch, you don't have to press, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, to answer your question briefly, 100% around 2 to 3 years just in R&D, just in research and development.
What are some of the African languages as part of the 40 that it translates?
We support Yoruba, we support Swahili, we support Afrikaans, and Urdu. We also support 2 languages in Ghana, which is actually it's in Nigeria's Igbo. And we are now further developing about 20 new languages in the African continent. Our goal is to really expand that, but to do it, we are also hoping to potentially have an R&D center in Africa where we will be able to really focus on more African languages.
And some of the international languages besides Mandarin?
Yes, we cover pretty much. Now we've actually expanded to around more than 50 languages. We've actually expanded, including Mandarin and mostly all the Asian languages. We cover all of them.
I can imagine also the verification process that it took, because you had to have people who actually speak the language to make sure that the sentences are structured properly, and that in itself is its own process.
Absolutely, yeah. We were lucky to, I live in a multicultural, country at the moment, and we were able to find, people that speak that language. But sometimes you need to be present. I remember early age when we were doing the business version of the products, which is the solution that can be used in hospitality industry. We had the opportunity to work with the Marriott, and we were in Shanghai. We spent almost 6 months in China to really, understand, all the slangs and, how can we customize the solution? How can it be built in such a way that, it can always learn? And also we can actually correct it. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Sometimes you need to be there, but we're really lucky that we don't we really have to travel to all these countries to actually develop the solution.
It's Wednesday. As part of our spotlight on Africans doing great things, we speak to Danny Manu today, who is a British-Ghanaian engineer and tech entrepreneur. He's built the world-first auto-translator earbuds, if you've just joined us here on Africa Rise and Shine. Our time being 21 minutes past 8 Central African. You'll catch the podcast if you missed the beginning, because you need to catch this entire chat. This is an incredible individual that we're speaking to today. Get in touch with us on our social media pages at Channel Africa 1 across all the different platforms, Instagram, X, TikTok. We're on Facebook as well. And just let us know what you think of our guest today. You, Danny, describe yourself as someone who strives to bring solutions that improve people's lives. Where does this passion or goal come from? I guess it takes us to your background then, in terms of your upbringing. Tell us more.
Yeah. multicultural environments exposed me to a diverse language and cultures, which sparks my interest in communication and technology. As I mentioned before, I have a Ghanaian heritage where over 100 languages are spoken. This really highlighted the importance of effective communication, and it really inspired my future endeavor in bringing languages together. In terms of I admire innovators who combined creativity and technology to make a difference. The ability to transform ideas into impactful solution motivated me a lot in my early age.
And you were born in Britain to Ghanaian parents. So talk to us about that, growing up in Britain and learning, obviously, the English language as you go to school, but also wanting to know your mother tongue or home language, as well as the influx of all the other cultural languages that are part of the British community. Was it a difficult one for you?
That was actually exciting. A little bit, I would say both.
Yeah.
I love people and I love culture. That's something that I'm really, really passionate about. I'm always curious to understand, a specific culture, and I'm willing to learn, devote myself to really understand it. So I think my curiosity also helped a lot in terms of culture and languages. But yeah, growing up in London was fantastic, and it's a really multicultural environment. And this really exposed me to so many languages. I had difficulties, speaking as well at early stage because my parents would try to get me to speak Twi, which is one of the Ghanaian languages. Being in school and in English, and then you have family friends, with their kids from different countries, or speaking English and maybe different language as well. So yeah, it can be a little bit overwhelming, but it was equally exciting at the same time.
I don't remember you mentioning Twi as part of the languages in the earbuds. Is that there?
It's coming. 100% it's coming. We are doing more testing on that, yes.
Please add isiZulu there. I know there's so many languages in the country that we are broadcasting from, South Africa, but if you know isiZulu, then you can pretty much communicate with anyone in the country. Please consider that in future.
100%, yes. We have a very, strong plans to start working on African languages. So yeah.
Yeah, if I'm honest, I would be saying isiXhosa, but I have to be a journalist and be impartial and not push for my home language. I have to be professional on that front. So you studied also at Oxford Brookes University. Talk to us about how that process was like and your student life.
Yeah, I mean, I had when growing up, I was really busy. Let's put it that way. Yeah. My entrepreneurial journey started at a very early age, at 19. I also come from, the music industry, so that's something I'm passionate about. I was a pianist. And I had, my goal was to build a studio. So, going to college, going to university. Actually, all the way from college, I was also working at the same time to be able to, generate some revenue to actually build the dream that I really wanted to have. Have my first recording studio. This is, way back when I was 19, 20. Going to college or uni, I had 2 jobs going on at the same time.
Wow.
2 jobs going on at the same time. After school, I'll go in the evening. I have evening jobs. It was just part time, but that kept me really busy. And also I was able to generate some income to support as well, because it was really tough for my parents to bring me up in terms of finance-wise. So I put a lot of my personal, I would say, savings to also support my education as well. University was fantastic. From there, I went straight into employment. I worked in the aeronautical engineering field for a few years before I started my own business. But I've always been an entrepreneur at really early age, combining my education with work, whilst building my dream as well.
And how did that experience shape the founding of your business? That experience as an employee. Manu was established in 2014, your company.
Yes, so that's the brand. So the brand was started at 2014. The actual name of the company is called CEH Technologies. So that's the name of the company.
Okay.
2019. So we started developing at age, yes.
And how did you, being an employee, and that experience contribute towards you founding your company?
A lot. I was lucky to be in, I've worked in smaller companies. I was working in hospitality. I was working in the food industry. I was working in Marks and Spencer's. I don't know if you know Marks and Spencer's. So I'll put food on the shelf. I'll be on the till. I'll talk to customers on a regular basis. And then in my professional career in aeronautical engineering, this is more of, inventing stuff, building, unique products for better experiences. Now, the way that really influenced, I was able to understand the process in, developing a new product, especially in my days in aeronautical engineering, because we build, all the aircraft engines in the world, and all the parts on an airplane as well. And this is the level of development, research, precision that goes into that is just amazing. So I was able to apply all the disciplines I learned from, my days in engineering and aeronautical engineering into my business, and we do that the same. And not just that, the culture as well. This is very, very important. When you are building a company, the people that you'll be bringing on board to work with you, you need to have a very, good culture in the company, and that really helps. Because at the end of the day, it's humans, and I was able to bring that in my company as well. And I've had people who've been with us for over 7 years and still work with the company. Yeah.
Well, we have to mention before we let you go that you've been recognized for your contribution to science, arts and culture. So we congratulate you as Channel Africa. We salute you in terms of that. And you have to keep going and keep flying the Ghanaian and African flag high.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much.
So where can one get Click earbuds, and how much do they retail for? I guess maybe you can tell us in pounds?
Yes, we have Click S, which is $159. The latest product, which is Click Pro, is $297. And this will be on our website at mymanu.com, and we kind of dispatch globally. But very soon we will have, hopefully, we'll have a presence in South Africa, and it will make it easy for our fans to really experience not just Clickers, but also all the other products we've got.
Awesome stuff. I wish we had more time. We could go on for an hour. I'm loving this chat, but thanks again for making time for us this early morning.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you. Danny Manu is British-Ghanaian engineer and tech entrepreneur who built the world's first auto-translator earbuds. He's an engineer, he's a tech entrepreneur, he's founder and CEO of CEH, his company, and then this product under my menu called Click, these earbuds that translate over 50 languages and more, because there's more that they're going to be incorporating into this. So that's our Wednesday profile on Rise and Shine. 31 minutes past 8 Central African time. Let's get news headlines with Jwalane Tulo.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Making headlines, Sudan's paramilitaries have declared the formation of a rival government to the country's armed forces. Yesterday marked 2 years since the start of the war that has become the world's largest humanitarian crisis. The Democratic Nursing Organization of South Africa has called on the authorities to ensure that justice is served in the case of 2 doctors and 6 nurses. The 8 are accused of attempted murder, fraud and selling human organs. And finally, French President Emmanuel Macron has honored more than 100 craftspeople and officials who helped to restore the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. I will have details on these and other stories at 9 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's get our sports news with Fikile Lingwadi, 8:32.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
We tee off with tennis news this hour. World number 2 Carlos Alcaraz came back from a breakdown in the second set to defeat Ethan Quinn 6-2, 7-6 and 8-6 tie and reached the Barcelona Open last 16. The home favorite, who triumphed at the Monte Carlo Masters last week, stormed through the first set, but Quinn, ranked 126th, battled valiantly in the second. Alcaraz has endured an inconsistent start of the year, crashing out of the Miami Open at the first hurdle in March as he prepares for his French Open title defense. 21-year-old is aiming for a third triumph on the clay in Barcelona after lifting the trophy in 2022 and 2023. He was unable to participate in the last edition because of injury. On to football news, a total of 12 African referees have been selected to officiate at the 2025 FIFA Club World Cup, which will take place in the United States from the 14th of June to the 13th of July. The referees are part of a pool of 117 officials selected from 41 FIFA member nations for the impending tournament. The competition will see Africa presenting 5 center referees, 5 assistant referees, as well as 2 referees who will be in the VAR section. The 4 teams representing Africa at the tournament are Al Ahly of Egypt, Mamelodi Sundowns of South Africa, Esperance of Tunisia, and Moroccan Giants Wydad. South African Sports Confederation and Olympic Committee, SASCOC, is currently still undergoing a slow consultative process to bid for the 2036 or 2040 Olympic and Paralympic Games. SASCOC will wait for the support and go ahead from the national government before it formally starts the bidding process. SASCOC has already expressed an interest in hosting the 2036 or 2040 Olympic and Paralympic Games, but the process is going at a snail's pace as they're still consulting. President Perry Hendrick says as many as 11 countries are bidding for those games.
We're in the consultation phase now. There's no bid at this stage. And you must remember, if we bid for the Olympics, it stands to reason that there will be the Paralympics afterwards. So if we are successful in our bid, in our current consultative phase, it's 2036 as well as 2040 that we're looking at. Because there are 11 countries bidding for 2036. We are at the stage where we're looking to our national government to guide us in terms of their support, our cabinet, our minister. And once we've received that sort of go-ahead from that level, then we'll go full steam ahead in making the preparations for the bid.
There's an added incentive for the host countries that will boost their bidding process, hosting the games in more than one city. Hendrick says SASCOC might look at the possibility of using 2 or 3 cities for that purpose.
The whole dynamics of hosting the Olympics has changed. Away from building permanent facilities, using temporary facilities. If you look at how Paris was able to disassemble all the facilities like the volleyball, we must look at it as well and identify various cities throughout South Africa. So it might not be one city. It might be 1 or 3 cities that can host these games in future.
Let's end with motor racing chairperson of the Kingdom's Automobile and Motorcycle Federation, Prince Khalid bin Sultan Al Abdullah Al Faisal, says owning a Formula One team could be the next step for Saudi Arabia after sponsoring the sport and hosting a Grand Prix. Saudi Arabia first hosted Formula One in 2021, while energy giant Aramco is a global partner of the sport and also title sponsor of the Aston Martin team. Other Middle Eastern countries who host races have ties to Formula One, with the Qatar Investment Authority holding a significant minority stake in the Audi team due to debut next year. Saudi Arabia has invested heavily in sports over the last few years, while critics accuse the kingdom of using to engage in sports washing in the face of the heavy criticism over its human rights record. The country denies accusations of human rights abuses and says it protects its national security through its laws. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fikile Lungwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Mix Vibration sur Channel Africa.
Nous allons accueillir sur ces plateaux de Mix Vibration un artiste pas comme les autres. Il est exceptionnel. Il se classe résolument dans la trajectoire des artistes qui défendent le patrimoine du folklore africain, mais aussi de la rumba. Ici, Jérémy Tchani.
En tout cas, je vous dis merci à la Channel Africa, à tout le monde qui nous suit. Dans la vie, si tu veux aller loin, il faut comprendre les temps. Il y a ceux-là qui étaient dans leur temps, mais à cause d'une mauvaise conduite, à cause des gens qui l'accompagnait, à cause de sa famille, à cause de beaucoup de choses, son temps passé.
Voilà, donc il faut toujours gérer le temps. Chaque chose a son temps, dit-on. Et la couronne ne dure pas éternellement, dit-on. Donc il faut toujours gérer le temps que Dieu vous a donné sur la terre. C'est le message que Jérémy Tchani nous amène aujourd'hui sur Mix Vibration à Channel Africa.
Mix Vibration tous les dimanches de 18h à 19h dans Universel.
A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Well, let's get a fresh perspective in terms of economics or business news. I'm sure we'll find out more about the strike in Mozambique. That will definitely have an impact as one of the stories there. Here's Tabisole Ruku with your details.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. South Africa's industrial sector is facing pressure on the back of declining mining production, as well as manufacturing production that has also been on the back foot. According to data released by Statistics South Africa, mining was down 9.6% annually in February, while manufacturing was down 3.2%. Timakatsolo reports.
South Africa's mining production was down for 4 consecutive months in February, weighed by the platinum group metals, which made the largest contribution to the decline after dropping by a whopping 23.9%, followed by iron ore, gold and coal.
Health professionals in Mozambique have announced that they will down tools tomorrow. They say the strike action will see the professionals only work 8 hours a day and will suspend working on weekends. Milton Malulek reports.
Take are the demands of the Association of United and Solidarity Health Professionals of Mozambique, which for 3 years has been asking the government to provide medicines to hospitals, purchase hospital beds, resolve the lack of food, equip ambulance with emergency materials and non-dispensable personal protective equipment, pay overtime, and improve the framework within the scope of the single salary table.
Canadian gold mining company B2 Gold has announced plans to cut 300 jobs in Namibia this year as it goes ahead with the phased downscaling of operations at its Otjikoto mine after depletion of open pit reserves. The Otjikoto mine produced a record 198,142 ounces of gold last year. Chanduko Ligeke reports.
Open pit mining at the mine is expected to cease this year following the depletion of gold ore, but the company will continue processing stockpiles at least until 2032. The mine's current underground operations are expected to run until 2027, with an extension possible if going exploration successfully uncovers additional mineral deposits. B2 Gold's phased reduction of operations in Namibia began in the first quarter of 2024, with 130 employees laid off during the year.
Algerian energy firm Sonatrach says it has signed 2 memorandums of understanding with U.S. shale company Occidental Petroleum to expand cooperation in hydrocarbon exploration and production in Algeria. The MOUs were signed on Monday on the sidelines of the U.S.-Algeria Energy Forum 2025. Sonatrach is the largest company in Africa and a major player in the global energy industry. The dollar clung to a small bounce as investors took a breather from weeks of fairly fierce selling and markets stabilized to wait for progress on U.S. trade talks. Chinese first quarter gross domestic product data and a batch of March economic indicators are due later in the session, though they will be backward looking, and U.S. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell is scheduled to speak. The Bank of Canada meets later today, with a rate cut priced at about 40% chance. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 603, Botswana 13 pula 76, Kenya 128 shilling 853, and Zambia 28 kwacha 28. The BRICS countries, Brazil, the dollar there will cost you 5 real 86, in Russia 82 rubles 373. India, 85 rupees, 76, China, 71.30, and in South Africa, the dollar will cost you 18 rand 93. $1 is trading at 75 pence, British pound, 88 euro, gold to $3,267, platinum 956, $1 per ounce, Brent crude oil, $64.53 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Thabiso Lohoko.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Este é o Caleidoscópio de Canal África, com Remo Samo e João Yabalá.
O surto da cólera em Angola tem causado grande preocupação, afetando já mais de metade das províncias do país. Simultaneamente, a Agência dos Estados Unidos para o Desenvolvimento Internacional, USAID, um dos maiores doadores mundiais de assistência humanitária, decidiu não priorizar os países com maior incidência de malária. Para discutirmos as causas do alastramento da cólera em Angola e os impactos dessa decisão da USAID, convidamos o Dr. Jeremias Agostinho, médico e mestre em saúde pública, para partilhar a sua visão sobre o tema.
A doença, nesse momento, representa o maior risco de saúde pública que nós temos. Nos últimos anos, a nossa preocupação esteve sempre centrada com os casos de malária, os casos de tuberculose e também de infecção por VIH-Sida. A forma como, em pouco menos de 2 meses, os casos de cólera vêm aumentando, acaba por representar, nessa altura, um dos maiores desafios que o país tem. É expectável que, nesta fase, o número de casos venha a aumentar.
De segunda a sexta-feira, das 20 às 21 horas locais, este é o Caleidoscópio de Canal África.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
It's 44 minutes past 8 Central African time, and this is now our final story for Rise and Shine on this Wednesday, going to Sudan. And high-level officials, including diplomats and aid officials, who met for a one-day conference in London on Tuesday. This was to find a way to end the civil war in Sudan. According to media reports, the conference was attended by, amongst others, the African Union, or AU, the European Union, or the EU, France, Germany, Egypt, Kenya, and the United Arab Emirates, or UAE. However, Sudan itself was not invited. The 2-year conflict has displaced millions of people, and to talk to us further and make sense of the meeting that took place, we joined on the line by Senior Advisor at the International Crisis Group, Liesl Low-Vordren. Liesl, thank you so much for joining us, and good morning to you.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
From media reports, the meeting was more about humanitarian aid to Sudan, but not necessarily ending the 2-year conflict. Can you talk to us more about that?
Yes, I mean, the outcomes of the conference focused on humanitarian aid, but we understand there was also an attempt to set up a new contact group or new discussions around peacemaking. But these, for the past 2 years, have been extremely difficult. So despite the fact that you had some of the main actors, the main backers and neighbors, and the African Union, as you noted, in the room, together with foreign ministers of the UK, France, and others, they were unable to release a statement regarding a new peacemaking initiative.
Who would be part of this new contact group?
Well, basically, ideally, it should be the UAE, Saudi Arabia, others that are backing, Egypt specifically, that are backing the army in Sudan, because we know that even though it is a war that has been dragging on now for 2 years between two armed factions, the SAF, the Sudanese army, and then the RSF, this war would not have continued the way it had without massive financial and military support to both sides. So it's essential that the talks include some of the backers of both sides.
As we talk about financial injection into this war, to aid rather the humanitarian cause into the war, increasing aid to Sudan by Britain has been reported. Is that wherein a solution lies? We've heard that the focus can now possibly shift to the UK's Save the Children as well as UNICEF after earlier reports of US aid cuts have said to be resulting in even some closures of some health clinics in Sudan.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's vital because, as you said, the US aid cuts have affected not only Sudan, but the rest of the continent, where we have dire displacement and refugee crises. So, from what we understand, the UK pledged over £500 million. Then also countries like Germany, for example, came in with over 100 million euro. So I think at the last count, we are looking at over $800 million perhaps for this humanitarian assistance to what is now the world's biggest humanitarian crisis. I mean, just in the last few days, we heard from aid organizations in Chad, on the border of Chad and Sudan, and outside of Al-Fasher in Darfur, that there have been tens of thousands of new refugees that have fled where they were already displaced in the Zamzam camps outside of Al-Fasher, that have left, literally just with the clothes that they're wearing, to places of refuge where they were only being able to be provided with water because there's not enough funds. And then last year in on April 15th, the 1 year of this war, we also had a conference in Paris where there were pledges of humanitarian aid. But now the situation has escalated, and as you say, the US aid cuts have affected the humanitarian aid. But in terms of a long-term solution, obviously we need a ceasefire. We also need humanitarian access, because many of the aid organizations have not been able to, for example, reach Al-Fasher, where the worst fighting is going on at the moment. So talks at a high level, diplomatic engagement is still of utmost priority to stop this war.
On that point of U.S. aid cuts, is it understandable the reasons given for this cut by U.S. State Department spokesperson, who said that many U.S.-funded humanitarian projects in South Sudan are operational, but the actual problem lies on the country's leadership and misuse of foreign aid? Can we understand this reasoning?
Well, no. I mean, like many of the decisions, we are still grappling with trying to understand, the gravity of it. And I think what has been very disruptive is how short notice people have had, aid organizations, in terms of these cuts that were very abrupt. So, the aid industry across the African continent have been affected, and I think have been trying to respond differently. And as you say, some others are stepping in. In some cases, countries themselves have had to step in and provide some of the aid. But what is clear is that, on the ground, it is having a very dramatic effect on the ability of aid organizations to provide for these people.
Back to the meeting in London on Tuesday. Do we know why Sudan was not invited?
Well, there's a big debate in the sense that, as I said, the warring parties, on the one hand, the Sudanese military, which has been suspended from, Sudan as a country has been suspended from the African Union due to the military takeover when the elected government was overthrown before the war even started. So as far as the African Union was a co-organizer of this. So that's one of the reasons why the General al-Burhan, who represents at this point the government of Sudan, was not invited. None of the two parties were invited because, as I said, the talks would have to include others. Obviously, ideally, everyone involved, all the stakeholders, should be at such meetings. And so, of course, as I said, there's a debate around who are the legitimate leaders of Sudan. The government based that have moved from Port Sudan to Sudan, according to the United Nations, are at this point the leadership, the government, because they represent the official military. So it is very difficult for organizations, diplomats, outside actors to get everyone around the table because the situation is so complex within Sudan itself.
And when it's impossible to get everyone around the table, in your opinion, is the African Union able to fully represent the people of Sudan without them being included or represented in such meetings? As we imagine, more will come.
Yes, the African Union has for the last 2 years organized meetings in Addis Ababa with political leadership and exiled civilian forces, so not military, trying to set up some kind of agreement amongst civilians and political parties in Sudan to, when the time comes, when there is a ceasefire, for them to be able to take over and ensure a democratic transition, which was the hope in 2019 when Omar al-Bashir was ousted. There were brief periods of time when you had a civilian government under, the former Prime Minister, Ndoro and others. He was the one basically leading this, but now there are obviously other political parties and so on involved. So that is the ideal that the African Union is striving to, is to be able to lead in terms of the civilian process. But now that process has been very long and not very successful at this point. We've also had civilians coming together in Cairo and Egypt. So the African Union, many people on the continent and elsewhere are blaming the African Union for its inaction, and it's true, we would have liked to see a much more forceful African Union, even if just to be at the meetings, to do advocacy in terms of raising this crisis internationally and putting it on the agenda. That's absolutely true. There was a big delegation now in London, and hopefully that will create a momentum so that, ideally, the solution should come from the continent, from AU, IGA, the neighbors, everybody who has the biggest stake in keeping Sudan together and getting them into this war. But it has been a fractured process because there have been so many outside actors involved, and that is really what should be stopped and contained, is this arming of both sides in the war in Sudan.
By when should this figure of about $800 million that are needed for aid in Sudan be accumulated? And was that a point of discussion at the London meeting?
Yes, unfortunately, I think that's one of the problems with these pledges, that very often it takes a long time, and some of them it's sort of a complex calculation because some of it is money that have already been pledged but not been disbursed, and so one really needs to unpack exactly what aid is coming from where and where is it going and how quickly. What is true is, organizations like the Médecins Sans Frontières, they're on the ground, they're right there. The UN agencies also, need that funding, and hopefully, it will come speedily, because the moment lives are really at stake, especially across Sudan, in the capital Khartoum, many other places, but also now, as I said, the emergency now in Darfur and on the Chad border.
Well, much remains to be seen in terms of solutions for that. But yeah, as I say, we expect more meetings will be held, and we hope for the best. But thank you again for your time, Liesl. We appreciate it. Have a great day.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
All right, Senior Advisor at the International Crisis Group, Liesl Low-Vorden, speaking to us on the line there about a meeting that took place, a conference in London on Tuesday to find a way to end the 2-year conflict that's displaced millions of people in South Sudan. So that's our final chat for today on Rise and Shine. Of course, up next is On the Move with Benjamin Mushatama and Pale Satau, and you can stay tuned to Channel Africa for that, as well as more programming. In the meantime, get in touch with us on our social media platforms. Today we were live streaming, so for everyone who tuned in on Instagram and Facebook, and I think the other one was YouTube. Yes, it was. Thank you so much for doing just that. And if you tuned in just on the radio, we also appreciate you. We'll be back with you tomorrow, 6 till 9. Peter Ndoro will be joining me in studio, my co-host. Please excuse him for today. He couldn't make it, and we'll continue there tomorrow. We are coming to you live from our Johannesburg studios, and up next is going to be the news in just a bit. Hopefully we can get a throw forward to On the Move in terms of what to expect on the show there. But what we've covered this past hour of Africa Rise and Shine, and you can get our podcasts as well on www.channelafrica.co.za if you'd like to catch some of those stories you may have missed. We had our Wednesday profile. Listen here, you need to know about this man called Danny Manu, Ghanaian British entrepreneur, tech entrepreneur. He's an inventor who's come up with these earbuds that can translate any language. As you are speaking, it translates for you what you want to say in that particular language. Great for, I guess, if you need to make some PowerPoint presentations in different parts of the world. And I hope he adds isiZulu there, at least for us here in South Africa. We need a language in those earphones. Great things coming up tomorrow as well on the show, and please do get in touch with us on our different social media platforms, as I say, at Channel Africa 1. All right, at 9 o'clock, let's hand over to Jolane Ngwepe, Janale Tulo Ngwepe, with our news. I'll see you guys tomorrow. My name is Asanda Beda. Bye-bye from now.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Top stories: Asawa, a call for justice against healthcare workers accused of selling human organs in South Africa, and the French president honours officials who helped to restore the Notre Dame Cathedral. Good morning. It's just gone 9 o'clock Central African time here on Channel Africa. With your news update, I'm Jolani Tulongwebe. The Democratic Nursing Organization of South Africa, DENOSA, has called on the authorities to ensure that justice is served in the case of 2 doctors and 6 nurses. The 8 are accused of attempted murder, fraud and selling human organs. The medical professionals allegedly harvested organs from unsuspecting patients during surgeries for profit. They are scheduled to appear in the High Court in Gqeberha in the Eastern Cape Province. DENOSA's provincial chairperson, Vuyolwetu Nodlau.
The NPA and the Justice justice system throughout has to attend to this case. We want to see justice prevail. We want to restore the people's faith to the healthcare system. So we call upon the government and the justice system to dig deeper and strengthen our health system, and including the legislation framework, because we find that those that have been brought to book, many a times they tend to run away with it. So that is what we are advocating for while we are looking into the matter, and we are going to follow it precisely.
South Africa's Police Minister Senzo Mchunu has denied claims that the investigation into the rape case of a 7-year-old girl at an Eastern Cape school only started after public activism. He appeared before the Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Police in Cape Town. The committee has urged on the police to give other rape cases as much attention as this case. The 7-year-old learner was allegedly sexually assaulted at her school while waiting for transport in October last year. Mchunu briefed the committee regarding progress of the investigation.
It is not true that South African police waited until there was this kind of activism while we welcome it. I don't think we should avoid facts, even when there are difficulties. Facts must remain facts. The investigation was started soon after it was reported, as General Masimula reported. Whatever we can say about the investigation, but it's a fact that it was not started after the activism of the public. It was started before.
Sudan's paramilitaries have declared the formation of a rival government to the country's armed forces. Yesterday marked 2 years since the start of the war that has become the world's largest humanitarian crisis. The leader of the Rapid Support Forces, RSF, Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, said the group was, quote, building the only realistic future for Sudan. Fighting raged on with the army, saying it had bombed RSF positions outside the city of Al Fasher, forcing hundreds of thousands to flee the Zamzam refugee camp. The inquest into the death of South Africa's liberation struggle stalwart Chief Albert Luthuli continues in the Pietermaritzburg High Court in the KwaZulu-Natal province. His daughter-in-law, Wilhelmina Luthuli, will again testify this morning. At the time of his death, Luthuli was the leader of the then-banned African National Congress Party. He won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1960 for spearheading the fight against apartheid. The original inquest found that he was hit by a goods train at Groundville on the KwaZulu-Natal north coast, but there were no pictures of the scene. Wilhelmina Luthuli has told the inquest the family has no doubt that their home was closely watched by the apartheid security police.
One would wake up and find a car standing near the hedge. Policemen, black and white, would be seated in the vehicle, just watching our home. If we had a visitor at home, a few minutes later, a special branch police vehicle would be parked outside. There was no doubt that we were watched.
French President Emmanuel Macron has honoured more than 100 craftspeople and officials who helped to restore the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. The ceremony took place at the LC Palace around the same time that the fire broke out in 2019. Around 30,000 people visit the cathedral daily. They include this visitor who says she's excited to see restoration of the building.
Very emotional, and it's wonderful that they were able to restore it, and it's just amazing to see all these crowds. It's just an amazing building. We were talking about the design is just beyond phenomenal.
Recapping the top story this hour, the Democratic Nursing Organization of South Africa, DENOSA, has called on the authorities to ensure that justice is served in the case of 2 doctors and 6 nurses. The 8 are accused of attempted murder, fraud, and selling human organs. For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo Webe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Hey, good morning. It is that time once again. It is 900 hours Central African time. We keep things moving in this Joburg morning. Thank you for joining us on DSTV channel 802, OpenView 628, and don't forget that you can also find us on